Fellow South Africans, as we approach World AIDS Day on the 1st of December, we are inspired by the many actions taken by many South Africans from all walks of life over many years to fight AIDS. Thank you to your efforts. We have the biggest HIV treatment program in the world, with nearly 3.5 million people on life-saving antiretrovirals. We are bringing care and treatment for TB to the doorstep of vulnerable populations in correctional services and mining towns. Today, South Africans are living longer and have more productive lives. Fewer people are dying from AIDS and TB. We have dramatically reduced mother-to-child transmission of HIV. This has been made possible because all of us have worked together.
And we should continue to work together. Very good morning to you. Very good morning to Elvis President.
Thank you, sir. Very good morning to you. Today, World AIDS Day.
Yeah.
It's a big day.
That's our focus today. We're going to, well, most of our programming is going to be around this. We'll have the Health Minister shortly to talk about what is happening, not just today, but with the program rollouts. However, we've been running a poll, and we're asking a serious question, Elvis,
a very pertinent question,
it's a legitimate question to ask now. It feels as if we're making some strides.
A number of things happening on the ground, and of course, as you heard the Deputy President there as well, we're asking the question, is the world really winning the war against HIV and AIDS? So thus far, 122 votes in, 52% of you are saying yes, so it's very tight, and 48% are saying no. Well, we'd like to find out from you, what do you make of that, and are we really winning the war against AIDS? And you can also send us a tweet on that as well. So keep them coming here on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom.
If it was a Brexit vote, you'd be pulling out of the European Union right now. That's World AIDS Day. Please send us that. Also, of course, hello December. That's what it's about. Que December, boss. From today, Elvis, the country kind of shuts down a little bit. But we're asking you, how has 2016 treated you?
Yeah.
On a personal note,
the question is, well, it was a good year thus far, you know. No deaths in the family or anything like that, but it was a tough year as well for many people.
Yeah, I think politically one of the toughest years in South Africa's 22 years of democracy. On a personal note, Elvis, I lost my mom.
Yes.
The world lost David Bowie, Prince. It's been some big losses, some big gaps.
It's been a tough year. I mean, the music industry lost some very credible people. Of course, Prince was one of those people that made it rain. Purple rain. Purple rain,
he says. Who can forget? Anyhow, this is time to get serious now. Let's get our first news update with Elvis.
Today is World AIDS Day with national celebrations in Davidton and in Kuruleni here in Gauteng. This is also this year's theme, which is "It is in your hands to end HIV and TB." Fidel Castro's ashes have begun a marathon procession across Cuba to his final resting place in the east of the island. And the oil producers group, OPEC, has agreed to cut production in an effort to boost prices, provided key countries outside the organization takes similar steps. Those, of course, are all the headlines for now. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Eben what's happening on the sports front.
Yeah, Kendall's not here today, so we'll step into the breach of us. Very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, here is our top story.
Masaluke is inside the penalty area as well, and it heads over to Masaluke. Look at him. Keeper goes on the adventurous route. Masaluke scores! Unbelievable!
Could only happen to Orlando Pirates. A sensational last gasp equaliser saw Baroka FC claim a 1-1 draw against Orlando Pirates in the Absa Premiership last night. Also, thousands of soccer fans in the Brazilian city of Chapeco filled the stadium with a moving vigil for the victims of the deadly Colombian plane crash. Those are our top stories in sports today, but let's go back to Elvis for more news.
Thank you, Eben. Top story this morning. The first massive HIV vaccine trial has been launched. Dubbed the HVTN 702 trial test, effectiveness against new HIV infections started yesterday. Now, the study is being spearheaded by 4 South African medical professors. Medical researchers say that the study is critical to South Africa due to the high rate of new HIV infections in the country. The vaccine is expected to end new HIV infections. It's being tested on HIV-negative participants aged between 18 and 35. The study, which involves more than 5,000 people, will take about 5 years to complete. If the trial yields more than a 50% positive result, it will then be open to a larger population. We'll bring you some updates on the HIV on 1st of December, which is World AIDS Day, from some of our reporters, and of course the official opening as well, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, the ANC has paid tribute to the late Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Party leaders and supporters filled up the O.R. Tambo Hall in Khayelitsha on the Cape Flats. The memorial service, led by the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, was also streamed live to Cuba's capital, Havana.
Remembering Fidel Castro, a charismatic internationalist and revolutionary, ANC leaders and supporters gathered in Khayelitsha to mourn, but also to celebrate Castro for his ideals and the role he played in liberating South Africa during apartheid.
We honor him and pay tribute to him because he was fearless, he was courageous, he was principled, he was disciplined. And as we think about his life, we also begin to imagine another icon that we had in our own lives, and that's Nelson Mandela.
The Deputy President also used the service to encourage all to emulate Castro's ideals and the Cuban work ethic. Castro was remembered for his ideals in social cohesion. Leaders lauded him for his ethical leadership, selflessness, and internationalist perspective, a champion of the poor.
We've come to say today, thank you to Comrade Fidel, the real El Commandant. We've come to say today, thank you to the volunteers that contributed to defend our comrades in Quito Carnival.
Nomawetu Solwandle, SABC News, Khayelitsha.
In Cuba, tens of thousands of people have lined the route of a procession that is carrying the ashes of Fidel Castro to his final resting place. The funeral cortege is on a 3-day journey to the east of Cuba. The caravan is going back along the roads that Castro and his revolutionaries took in 1959. It formed part of their victory march to Havana to build a communist society on the doorstep of the United States. Castro ruled Cuba for a half a century until 2008. His death on Friday at age 90 has plunged the Caribbean island into 9 days of mourning. Castro's ashes will be interred on Sunday. Oil prices have surged nearly 10% to above $50 a barrel after the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, also known as OPEC, agreed to cut production for the first time in 8 years. OPEC says that overall production will be reduced by 1.2 million barrels a day. Now, this is about 3% of the group's output. The agreement represents a major reversal in policy for Saudi Arabia, which 2 years ago tried to undermine other high-cost producers by raising its output. OPEC says it expects producers from outside the group, including Russia, to join with additional cuts totaling 600,000 barrels a day. The OPEC cuts were deeper than many analysts had expected, amounting to about 1% of global production. The 14-member group hopes that the output cuts will help shrink a supply glut that has been fed in part by the U.S. shale boom and has depressed oil prices for more than 2 years. Well, as you know, it's World AIDS Day today, and that is our focus point today. Let's go over to Eben. Of course, there's a couple of questions. In fact, there's a poll that we're running, so it's over to Eben.
Yeah, obviously, interesting one. It seems as if we're taking a few steps forward in this war against the dreaded disease. So we put up the poll asking you guys, what do you think? Are we there? Are we winning the war against HIV and AIDS? That is where we're standing now. 124 votes. 124 votes in. We're still sitting at just over 50% of you believing that there is light. There is light in this fight against the dreaded disease that has affected South Africa, especially badly, of course, if you've just joined us. Today is World AIDS Day. This day, people come together worldwide in solidarity to unite in the fight against HIV. Last week, the first national CD4 viral load monitoring dashboard, an online tool that monitors CD4 counts and viral loads in South Africa's HIV-positive patients, it was launched. Now, viral load is the best predictor of an HIV-positive patient's response to treatment. A bit earlier, we spoke to the Minister of Health, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, from our studios in Pretoria, who gave us an update on the fight against HIV/AIDS in South Africa.
This is World AIDS Day, where we usually come together to reflect and also map the way forward. We usually give statistics of what's happening. We give the plans that exist around the country and around the world. We issue statistics, and we encourage people that the end to HIV/AIDS and TB is inside. That is why the theme for this year is, it is in our hands to end HIV/AIDS and TB.
Mm-hmm. It's in our hands, but if it's in our hands, what does the fight look like currently as we speak, Minister, against HIV/AIDS?
Elvis, as you know, a fact which was repeated many times at the International AIDS Society Conference held in Durban, here in South Africa, in July this year, the theme that keeps upcoming is that we've been successful, you know, on the biomedical treatment of HIV. The biomedical part has been going very well. We are running the biggest treatment program in the world, 3.4 million people in South Africa alone, which is 20% of the global program. Our biggest weakness is the socio-behavioral part of it. That means the prevention, how people behave towards HIV and AIDS, and preventing it even before they get infected. That's why the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the chairperson of South African National AIDS Council, launched a program called Whole Society, Whole Government Program, which is targeting girls in the age group 15 to 24 years, because research has shown that the rate of infection in that age group is still very high and is marching forward.
15 to 24, is that the most vulnerable group that we have in our society, Minister?
Yes, the girls and young women in the age groups between 18 to 24 are the most vulnerable. As I said, research has been done in Southern and Eastern African countries, which found that in those 14 countries, the rate of HIV infection among girls between 15 and 24 years is at the rate of 55,000 new infections per week. Mm-hmm. And half of that is occurring in South Africa. So we have got to pay special attention to that group.
Now, last week, the first national CD4 viral load monitoring dashboard was launched, an online monitoring tool. How will this assist us in the fight against HIV and AIDS?
Well, if you could remember, Elvis, in 2014, at the International AIDS Society Conference, which was then held in Melbourne, in Australia, we adopted the concept of 90-90-90, meaning we have got to find and test 90% of people who are HIV positive and 90 those who are found to be positive must be put on treatment. And 90% of those who are on treatment must be virally suppressed. Now, once you reach that stage of viral suppression, you can declare that HIV/AIDS is over because it's no longer being propagated. Now, you cannot do that. You cannot declare that people are, their viral load is down unless you measure the viral load. You cannot, you cannot declare that somebody is virally suppressed unless you have measured their viral load. And this means measuring the viral load of each and every person who is on ARVs. And that's how big the job is going to be.
The LGBTI community, they want their own clinics because they say they still face challenges when they go to normal clinics. And they want their own clinics. And the question is, would government consider something like that, that is separate from the normal clinics for LGBTI community specifically?
Well, special clinics are important. And in fact, Elvis, when we were in Durban during the International AIDS Society Conference, I visited Prince Mushieni Hospital with Sir Elton John, because Sir Elton John has funded the establishment of special clinic for the LGBT at Prince Mushieni Hospital, and it's working very well. It's specially funded by him, and I'm sure you'll understand the reason, where the LGBT can go and relax and share and receive their treatment. It is a desirable thing because we are intending to do the same thing for adolescents, what we call adolescents-friendly clinics. Because, these are special type of people who are called key populations, who are specifically more affected by this particular pandemic more than other people in the general population. And so they've got special needs. And as you know, the stigma in our country, how we view some of these things. So you'll need an environment, whether it's LGBT, whether it's adolescents, you need an environment where they can relax and come out without being asked many questions. For instance, young people, it's well known, when they go to some of our clinics, they are asked a lot of questions that, no, but you are still too young. Why do you want condoms? Why do you want contraception? Do your parents know that you are here? Can you bring them along? And things like those are not, are not good for
yes,
individuals who will freely visit such institutions.
There was a vaccine trial that was launched yesterday. I'm not too sure if you're aware of that. And are you positive, perhaps, or are you hopeful that we will get a positive result from this vaccine trial that was launched?
Oh, yes, I'm very, very much aware. I'm very, very much aware. We are keeping in touch because we are working with the academics who are doing it. Yes, it's a candidate vaccine, Elvis. We are very hopeful, but also realistically we are aware that it means that that whole work might give results in only 5 to 10 years. So the main work of preventing HIV still has to go on, because we really don't know. Even if that vaccine is promising, we don't know at what time it will be ready. And as I'm saying, I'm not a scientist who is involved in that, but I know that vaccine tests take too long, so it won't be in less than 5 to 10 years' time.
Yeah, that was our Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, in conversation with Elvis Preslin on World AIDS Day today. Of course, social media is abuzz with, everything that's going on. We'll be crossing live to a couple of venues a little bit later in the show. But let's first take a look at the roundup with what's on our social media pages right now. Now, of course, World AIDS Day, the hashtag is WADCaps2016. A day that should not be ignored as the world's best scientists and medical specialists, NGOs and communities continue to fight the deadly virus. Of course, South Africa has launched a new vaccine trial that could propel us closer to a solution to ending the pandemic. Now, the UN says years from now, people will say they made the right decisions to end the AIDS pandemic. We have to dream big for those who serve. Ufelebe says the following: may we remember all of our loved ones that have been victims of the virus and all of us still affected by it. Yes, Abraham Prince says The early bird catches the... It's time to know your status. Get tested now. You can also follow the hashtag In Our Hands for all the news around what is going on today. But today is also the 1st of December, and people are excited for the holiday season that is upon us. Hashtag December, boss. Schoolgoers wrote their last exam yesterday. Some already on holiday. They're getting into a well-deserved break, and many are preparing for parties, well, very much like in this picture. Not this one, but it's going to be a big party, that one. Then, Wakile says, I'm off to go buy alcohol, with lots of dancing emojis. And some sobering thoughts from Ridwan, who says, excited about December? Calm down. Let your debit orders go first. Yeah, it's keeping it very real with all of those of you that are busy spending the money that you don't have. Then, of course, yeah, on a serious note, the coffin case is back in the courts today, as the two suspects you see here in picture apply for bail. Of course, quite a stir on social media when he first made headlines. Pearl says the following: every time I hear something about this coffin case, I feel emotionally drained, provoking us yet again. Then, people are still mourning the loss of the Brazilian soccer team Chapecoense, of course, who passed away in a plane crash. This image sums it up just about, singing and dancing in the locker room for reaching the final. And then 3 days later, it went down. What a sad picture. What a sad moment for Brazilian football. What a sad moment for the world when you lose an entire team like that in one go. Now, don't forget the poll that we're running, of course. Are we winning, or is the world winning the war against HIV/AIDS? Go and vote. We'd love to see your vote there. 125 votes, 51% say, yes, we're winning the war. But 49% are saying, don't think so. It's going to be a tough one, this one. Keep it coming. Keep on voting there. It's World AIDS Day. We all have to take part in some way or the other. Now, we move on and we take a look at our picture. Let's take some comments on the poll. Siwa Piwa says, Newsroom, I think the world is not winning the war against HIV/AIDS because other people who have HIV, they do not use their treatment. Yes, there are some, they are isolated. Unati says, I don't think the world is winning because every second of a minute someone is infected. Yes, but we do have cures and we have a positive outlook to the future. We're running a trial that might even work. Who could have ever thought about that 20 years ago, Unati? Siapana says, Newsroom, I don't think so, because each and every day there is someone infected with AIDS and HIV. Tsepo Papiso says, Newsroom, perhaps the rest of the world, maybe Africa, has a long way to go. Tsepo, why? Why? You're running the biggest trial here in South Africa. Lechasa says, yes, we are South Africans. We are going far. Yes, Lechasa, South Africa is leading the fight against HIV. And Nomsa says HIV is increasing every day. Nomsa, the numbers, we are bringing the numbers down. It's a fact. It's not fantasy. Let's take a look now at our picture of the day. This one comes from Kamsela Pile. And it's captioned, Mube receives the first HIV vaccine in Durban leg of the trial. There you have the first person on the trial. About 5,400 of them will go on trial at the Medical Research Council. That picture of the day sort of shows us, gives us an insight into the very start of this trial. Now, our comment of the day is on screen. It comes from the Beholder at Bootle87, who says, please note that this is not a cure. Don't start acting careless about your life. Hashtag HIV vaccine. On point there, Bootle. Like the way you think. Yes, this is not a cure. It doesn't mean that we can now go and change our behavior. We all have to work together to fight this deadly virus. Of course, it's a busy day in the courts, as you can imagine. Let's just go do a quick roundup around the courts in Middelburg. Of course, the case of two men accused of assaulting a suspected robber and threatened to pour petrol over him and bury him alive is back in the Middelburg Magistrates Court. Two accused, Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Martins Jackson, will be filing for an urgent bail application. They allegedly forced Victor Retabile Mlotshwa into a coffin It's known as the coffin case here in South Africa. Then, in Limpopo, an urgent bail application for the 52-year-old man who's been arrested for the leak of a mathematics question paper is expected to be heard at the Kiani Magistrates Court. That's in Limpopo. Tinyiko Koza made an urgent application yesterday after his bail was denied last week. Then in Durban, a suspect who was arrested for killing a policeman and burying him in a shallow grave is expected to be sentenced in the Durban High Court today. The man has already pleaded guilty to committing the crime along with two other officers who denied committing the offence. The body of Constable Nkanyiso Ngobo was found in a shallow grave after he'd been missing for around 3 weeks. We stay in Durban. A 28-year-old woman has died in hospital after a 2-week-long battle for her life. This after she was doused with petrol and then set alight, allegedly by her husband, Glen Hills at Kwadukuza. The 35-year-old husband appeared in court yesterday on charges of attempted murder. We're going to take a short break. It's World AIDS Day. When we come back, we will escalate this discussion, so don't go away.
Give me that paperwork.
Where is your paperwork?
Like I'm saying, I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I'm locked up.
This is not fair. Senta Twasezan. Not fair.
Who puts a rent at 200? How is it like 200? How we want? 150, 150 plus. Let me in another one. 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out.
Yes, I just want to lock me then out.
Who are starting gangsterism.
No. No. No.
Now, on the eve of World AIDS Day, South Africa embarked on a major study that marks the start of a vaccine trial which sets out to test its effectiveness against the new HIV infections. Despite advances to curb new infections in South Africa, the HIV Vaccine Trials Network, HVTN, says that more than 1,000 people become newly infected with HIV daily. Now, that's a scary statistic, isn't it? The vaccine trial named HVTN 702 was tested in over 5,000 volunteering HIV-negative HIV male as well as female South Africans aged between 18 and 35 years. The participants will receive a total of 5 injections over 1 year, together with the South African standard of care for preventing HIV infection, and will then be followed for another 2 years thereafter. Now, the project is spearheaded by 4 South African scientists. Now, should the study yield significantly promising results, this could become the world's first HIV vaccine to be approved, placing South Africa at the forefront of such a discovery. In our Cape Town studio, we have the U.S. Director, Division of AIDS at the National Institute of Health, which is running the new HIV vaccine trial, Dr. Karl Diefenbach. A very good morning to you, Doctor, and welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, you must be elated at the start of the trial. It started yesterday.
I'm quite pleased.
Can we say with certainty that South Africa is on the brink of a major breakthrough with this particular trial, you think?
I think South Africa is part of the new wave of HIV prevention, and this trial is one of the major steps forward in that battle. But remember, this trial is just beginning, and we will not see results for 2 to 4 years.
So it'll be some time before we can see the first results coming through. What are you looking for in terms of those results?
So in 2 to 4 years, we hope to see between an effect size of between 50 and 60% efficacy or activity. I think that's a number that would then allow this vaccine to move toward licensure and wider use here in South Africa.
Please tell us more about this HVTN 702, which is based on a modified form of a previous vaccine.
Yes. So 7 years ago, we had the result of RV144, also known as the TIE trial. It had a modest effect of about 31%. And in the past 7 years, we've taken that vaccine that was used in Thailand, modified it so it was specific and focused for South Africa, and also tried to strengthen it. So we're looking for a vaccine that is more durable, more active, and somewhat easier to use. And that's why we're here testing it in South Africa.
Talk to us about the results in Thailand. How promising was that?
So we have to put it in perspective. There had been 4 very large clinical trials previous to the Thai trial, and all had failed. The Thai trial had a modest level of activity of about 31%. So we would like to approximately double the signal that we had seen previously.
Now, the volunteers that has been selected for this particular trial, Doctor, how were they selected for the entire program?
So these are all volunteers, people from the community that have an interest in participating in this vaccine study. All you have to be is between male or female, HIV negative, between the ages of 18 and 35, and be willing to participate to give samples of your blood and receive a vaccine or receive shots over the course of a year, 5 shots, 5 sets of shots.
Now, I tried to give an indication as to the monitoring process, but can you take us through that? How will they be monitored over the period, and what will they be doing?
So that's a really important question. So they will be monitored for the safety of the vaccine, and although we are highly confident that this vaccine is quite safe, it has already been tested in another study here called HVTN 100. Then we used the vaccine in approximately 250 people with absolutely a very clean safety record. So we will monitor for safety, and then we will monitor and test the study participants over the course of the year and beyond for their response to the vaccine, as well as whether or not they have been infected with HIV. Because this trial is blinded, meaning nobody knows who got the vaccine, who received the vaccine, and who received the sham vaccine, it's only through this kind of testing will we be able to sort out the effectiveness of the product. And we will, neither the investigators nor the people at NIH or the study participants will know what they received until the trial ends, or sometime in 2020 or 2021. Mm-hmm.
What hope is there for people currently living with the disease, Doctor? So HVTN 702 can't do anything for them right now, is there?
Correct. So we have to think about the challenges we face. Is the most important aspect of HIV care and treatment is first know your status. I agree with the Twitter comment earlier. First, figure out your HIV status. If you're HIV negative, do what you can to protect yourself. If you're HIV positive, get onto antiretroviral therapy or drug therapy to prevent the virus from growing in your body. Take your pills, and then you will have a very good chance of reasonable life expectancy. Therapy is quite powerful and can protect you from further damage that the HIV virus can do to your body. So for HIV positive people, it's essential that they start therapy and adhere or stay on their therapy. And it should be a point of pride for those individuals to start therapy and stay on therapy. And so that's where your family and your support network should come in and help you stay adherent to your antiretroviral therapy. And we all must do everything we can to fight stigma, and the best way to do that is work together to achieve successful treatment for people who are HIV infected.
And just a final thought for South Africans and around the globe, Doctor, people around the globe on this World AIDS Day today.
One final thought is the battle is not over. We must continue daily to test people, get them on treatment, and work equally hard to improve HIV prevention methodologies. And that's what we're here about in South Africa today with the launch of HVTN 702. It is a banner day here in South Africa.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our Cape Town studios.
My pleasure.
That was the U.S. Director Division of AIDS at the National Institute of Health, which is running the new HIV vaccine trial, Dr. Karl Diffenbach. Now, he said it's a new day for South Africa in the fight against AIDS. Let's go over to Eben to find out more.
I like that. A banner day for South Africa is what he said. Yeah, a red banner day for the world, though. World AIDS Day. But it's also December for us here in South Africa. Yes, it's a time when we, get a good feeling and work a little bit less. So we're asking you this question. How do you reflect? Hello, December. But how do you reflect on 2016? How has this year treated you? Of course, we can talk about stories of loss, success, other gains and so forth. You know, this was a year that, we lost Prince, we lost David Bowie, and many things felt like it was just too much for us. Politically, it was a very difficult and draining year. How's it been for you? Let's have a look at some of your views that you're sending in regarding que December, boss. Here we go. Lechasa says, hello, Mr. Elvis, Kendall, everyone on SABC. You left me out, Lechasa. I'm going to ask him not to put your tweet up. Anyhow, I'm just joking. Everyone on SABC. 2016 was fabulous to me. I really enjoyed it, but I wish I could bring back Mandoza. We lost some legends this year. Mandoza will live forever. CYP says, Newsroom, 2016 treated me well. December, boss. Happiness thus far. Ayaka says, Newsroom, not good at all. Things didn't work according to my plans. Yes, maybe you need to speak to your spiritual advisor again. Find a way to make it work next year. And Kosenati comes out and he says, well, it started well as I bought a car in January and in June was hospitalized after rolling it. So 2016 wasn't good for me in Kosenati. Sad to hear that, my friend. This one from Siapana Zule Shaw, where it says, Newsroom, 2016 treated me very well because at the beginning of this year, I planned to buy a house and now already buy it. Thanks God, says Siapana. It's nice to see some people have had fantastic years. Yes, good news. Let's hope 2017 will treat us a little bit better than 2016 has. You can only do that, though, if you put in the work. That's at least what, my father always used to tell me. Anyhow, let's go onto our Facebook page, because there's a lot happening around the world. Let's just have a look at, the world, of course, will commemorate World AIDS Day today. He's commemorating World AIDS Day under the theme, it is in our hands to end HIV and TB. National commemorations in South Africa will take place in the African Village Marquee at the Senaba Stadium in Davidson in Ekurhuleni, where Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the keynote address. We'll be there live a little bit later. Then we see the Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department are concerned about the mushrooming of illegal initiation schools in the Buffalo City Metro, which include East London and King Williamstown. Finally, the president of the Food and Allied Workers Union, Atwell Nazo, has called for a summit on sugar, fat, health and jobs in order to deal with the causes of obesity. All of that and more on that page you see on screen. Go there and like it. If you like it, you get all the news updates as they break in your live feed. So go there. Let's quickly take a squiz around the front pages from around the globe right now. We'll start in the United Kingdom, where The Guardian reports that Theresa May should unilaterally pass legislation to secure the rights of up to 3 million European Union citizens to stay in Britain or risk souring the tone of the Brexit talks. Moving to New York, the Wall Street Journal says President-elect Donald Trump said he's taking steps to separate himself from his businesses in total in order to focus on running the country. He was responding to criticism that his global real estate empire might pose unprecedented conflicts of interest for a U.S. leader. Finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that coalition parties remained at loggerheads yesterday over legislation to retroactively legalize thousands of settler homes built on private Palestinian property, including the Amona outpost, leading to the bill's removal from the Knesset docket. Of course, it's World AIDS Day, and experts launching the world's first HIV vaccine efficacy trial at Crossroads on the Cape Flats have allayed concerns over whether the vaccine would pose risk to volunteers for the virus. The Emavavundleni Clinical Research Centre is one of two centres in Cape Town at which the landmark trial will be concluded.
The HVTN 702 is the first of HIV vaccine prevention trial, and we're looking at efficacy of that prevention in looking at a set of products that were first tested in Thailand a number of years ago, in fact 7 years ago. That study showed efficacy of about 30%, so really quite modest. But because we saw some signal, and we're very excited about that, the world really has galvanized, and a number of scientists around the world have got together. We've said it needs to come here to South Africa, where clearly there's a very great need for a prophylactic vaccine. It's been modified to work better in our environment, and we've made some differences that we believe will increase its potency and its durability.
After a short break, we'll be talking to some of the volunteers on this vaccine trial to tell us what they've been going through and what the experience has been like. So don't go away.
Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
South Africa remains in the grip of a dry spell. It's led to water restrictions imposed across the country. About 20,000 cubic centimeters are being released per second. Authorities say that it could take 10 days. In the meantime, they're appealing to residents to use water sparingly. Transnet says that it's increased its revenue despite the weak economic conditions affecting volumes that it handled.
The company says going forward it will be investing in mergers and acquisition opportunities to expand Transnet services. It says while it does not believe South Africa will be downgraded, it has however begun negotiations with lenders to prepare for any eventualities.
Welcome back. You're still at Newsroom on SABC News. Of course, South Africa made history yesterday by conducting and participating in the first HIV vaccine efficacy study. Now, the HIV vaccine can be found to be working that could dramatically alter the course of the pandemic, according to the HVTN 702 protocol chair and president, as well as the chief executive officer of the South African Medical Research Council, Dr. Glenda Gray. Now, HVTN 702 aims to enroll 5,400 men and women, making it the largest and most advanced HIV vaccine clinical trial to take place in South Africa, where more than 1,000 people become infected with HIV every single day. Now, in our Cape Town Sea Point studio, we have Lorna Jack, a participant in the HVTN 100 study before that, which was a safety study before the HVTN 702 trial that's now underway. Also, a 21-year-old student at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, and currently she's studying public relations management. Next to her is Ntando Yola, a community mobilization officer from the Desmond Tutu HIV Center. A very good morning to you guys. Wonderful to have you with us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Can I start with you, Lorna? You are a volunteer and you are on the HVTN 100 program. Tell us about that and then tell us about your expectation for this trial.
Okay. Firstly, I've heard about the HVTN 100 from a friend of mine. So I came to the station because I wanted to learn more about what's happening. Then I went there and I was lacking on knowledge. I didn't know what's happening. So they gave me information and told me everything that's happening about what the HVTN 100 is about. Basically, the HVTN 100 is the first step of the HVTN 702. You get vaccinated. The vaccination is to see how your immune system reacts on the drug that is injected in you. So basically, the drug is to protect you. The drug is to protect you. It's to your immune system to be able to fight when HIV, the virus, comes and to contact with your body. So yeah, that is what is expected. What is expected from us is to always be safe, always use condoms. I want to emphasize this part. The vaccine is not about being HIV. It's not about curing the HIV. It's about keeping those who are negative to stay negative, so that you don't get affected in the near future coming. So it is to protect us. I want people to understand.
Tell me about how you're feeling today after getting a shot yesterday.
Well, today I'm quite, I'm happy, I must say, because I want this to be a success. I want everything to go according to our scientists who want to see their work go to be a success. So I'm quite happy. Yes.
Let me move over to Ntando, who's working with the Desmond Tutu HIV Centre. Ntando, what are your hopes? You work with the volunteers at the centre. What are you guys hoping for this vaccine to achieve? And extend it maybe a little bit to the work that you're doing with the likes of Lorna.
No, great. I mean, really, the hope, which I think is the hope for everybody, is that we need to see a future where we have no HIV, where, you know, new HIV infections are really a history, which is not the case at the moment. And we have learned from history, for instance, with regards to polio, we know that polio has been eradicated. The last case of polio in South Africa was in 1989. And the reason we have no more polio in South Africa today is as a result of a vaccine. And this is the hope that we are really pinning on finding an HIV vaccine. So really our role is to really work with communities and mobilize communities to be behind the science, because there's a lot of work that is happening in the country around ensuring that, you know, we reduce as much as possible new HIV infections. We have things that we are doing today that are available today for HIV prevention. However, an ultimate a tool that is needed by everyone, by the future generation, is to really get an HIV vaccine that will ensure that we have no more new HIV infections in this country and in the world and in Africa.
Ntando, you oversee the volunteers program. You oversee this process with the vaccine and so forth. Tell me how you're going to go about monitoring what happens with the likes of Lorna and other volunteers over the years to come now.
No, absolutely. So as a research center, like many other research centers that are across the country, we work with the volunteers from the community from the time when, you know, before they come into the center. When we recruit them, we tell them about the study and what is expected and what the research is about and what their role is about, which is very important, as you have heard from Lorna. So we really engage with them on a continuous basis, from meeting them in the community, bringing them into our varied research centers, and we take them through a process that we call an informed consent process. This is a process that really ensures that the community members who put themselves and their lives to volunteer into finding a vaccine are informed about what it means to be a volunteer and participate in a research study. So, and we also take them through a process that we called risk reduction counseling, because one of the very important messages as part of the research is to emphasize, and Lorna has told us that, it is to emphasize that this is a research study. We are trying to find a vaccine. It is not yet available. It is not yet licensed. It has not been found. So it is important that people use all the tools that we have in the country and in the public health system for us to be prevented from HIV infection. So really an expectation is that, you know, once volunteers understand all of this information, they can take part and really enthusiastically be part of this search for a vaccine. And also we sort of engage with the community so that they ensure that they support the volunteers who are part of our trials.
Thank you very much, Ntando. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, my friend. We have to move. Thank you, Lorna, and all the best with the vaccine trial, my dear. I hope all goes well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that is, of course, 21-year-old student at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, my former institution, mind you. Her name is Lorna Jack, and she's a participant now in the HVTN 702 trial. With her was Ntando Yola, who's a community mobilization officer from the Desmond Tutu HIV Center, who will be helping to oversee the vaccine trial. But let's take a couple of tweets quickly on World AIDS Day as we're standing by. What are you saying? May we remember all of our loved ones that have been victims of the virus and all of us affected by it, says Ufeleba. Immaculate Amanya says, we're all either infected or affected by HIV, so let's all join the world and celebrate World AIDS Day with positivity. Kick AIDS out of our UG. Fortune says, with the new HIV vaccine being tested out in South Africa, one can pray on this day that it works and we defeat this monster. Abdu says, December 1st, and I guess you know that what it means. Have you tested? Don't be scared. Get tests for annually injected death sentence. AIDS. Oops. And look at what a wonderful picture this is. Can we roll it up and see where and in what context this picture is? Of course, that's a ribbon, the same ribbon that we have on our jackets today. Wonderful picture. Of course, today is the 1st of December. Yes, in South Africa we say December, boss, but it's World AIDS Day, and we're fighting this scourge, and we have to put our hands together in this fight. Time now for us to go over to Tsietse Monare to tell us what the weather will be doing for the next couple of days.
Welcome from the weather desk. It is expected to be a hot day here in southern Africa, so be ready for temperatures to soar up to about 42 degrees in some parts and even 43 in Skukuza. And taking a look at the rainfall, looks like we're expecting some showers just along the eastern coast over KwaZulu-Natal, some parts of Lesotho and over Mpumalanga province today and tomorrow, but mostly going to be quite a clear day for South Africa as well as over the southern parts of Namibia. Nothing in terms of rainfall expected along the SADC regions, especially towards the western side, except only for hot weather that you should be looking out for. Upington reaching a maximum of 39 degrees and a hot day continuing right across the northern and the central parts of South Africa. Pretoria is at 38, 34 for Johannesburg and over much of the East Rand. For all those that live in places such as Roodepoort, do expect a hot day over the western side of Johannesburg. Bloemfontein is at 35, 31 for De Aar and Durban reaching a maximum of 25 degrees. Madagascar should see some varied temperatures, 28 for Mazanga and a drop to 26 for Antananarivo. Bulawayo over Zimbabwe is at 34 degrees. We're seeing those upper 30s towards Beitbridge and lower 30s for Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe. Maputo is at 35 degrees. Rainy weather is expected along those parts. And also, as you stretch further over Central Africa, do expect partly cloudy skies, widespread showers along the central and the southern parts, going all the way towards the southern parts of the DRC. That's where you should expect a bit more rainfall. And clear weather for Cameroon as well as over Central African Republic. Banjul, in fact, reaching a maximum of 38 degrees. And a hot weather towards Brazzaville and over Kinshasa as it reaches a maximum of 30. 31 for Luanda and 22 for Addis Ababa. Juba reaching a maximum of 36. Nairobi is at 23. Some partly cloudy skies are expected towards Damascus, Baghdad, and over Cairo. And you can see along those parts there are some small possibilities of felt fires in those areas. So if you're going to be up towards the northern parts here, that's where you should expect most of your rainfall. And then clear conditions and dry weather is expected just along Agadez and Al Jouf over the southern parts of Egypt and in towards Libya. We're expecting clear conditions over into the weekend and basically the next week as well. It's not expected to be raining there, but we'll see temperatures dropping 18 for Cairo, 10 for Baghdad, so cooler weather is expected there. And just out of your shot there, all the way towards the northern part, as you move in towards Russia, Moscow is expected to be extremely cold. And then hot weather towards Mecca at 33 degrees, 24 towards Sana'a and Djibouti, 28. Nothing changes much for West Africa. A bit of clouds coming up along the coastal parts and clear weather for the northern and the central part of West Africa. Timbuktu is expected to be quite hot. Bamako, Ouagadougou, going to Niamey. And for all those that are going to be in Lagos, Lome, as well as Accra, do expect similar conditions. It's going to be all dry for the next couple of days. Nothing coming up in terms of rainfall. This afternoon, temperatures will drop to 21 for Las Palmas and a hot day for Niamey as well as in N'Djamena. Bamako is at 38 degrees. And for all those that are going to be in Bakau, expect a maximum of about 24, including that of Marrakech. So a bit of a cool day is expected for northwestern Africa. That's it from the weather side. Do stay tuned. There'll be more here on SABC's News Channel.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the man who takes the party from zero to hero, from bland to grand, from average to, well, to way above average. The guy who toots the party train horn and says, "All aboard!" You are indeed a party comrade, and we salute you with a bottle of Chivas Regal 12-year-old blended Scotch whiskey, plus 2 glasses for just $279.99, exclusive to Tops at Spa.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport, or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
One of the key things that you have there is preservation of the teeth, so that when you can function, you can chew your food. And if they are not taken care of properly, you can lose them.
The most common infection in the mouth is on the tooth, and it's dental caries or tooth decay.
That prolonged contact of the sugary substance, being juice or was in contact with the teeth for a long time, that's what causes the children to have what you see as rotten teeth.
We have a method that has been developed at VETS, which is called Appropriatech, which allows the person to have dentures delivered in a very quick and simple manner.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Welcome back, everybody. Rene Vestas just joined me. We'll be flying solo for the next hour, keeping you updated with everything happening from around the world. Of course, it's World AIDS Day today, Rene, and we're running a poll, and it's been a very tight affair. We're asking people if it looks like the world is winning the war against HIV/AIDS.
Yes, that's quite right now. There's been a lot of support for this day. We were speaking earlier saying maybe people have forgotten about this day, but I don't think they have, Evan.
Yeah, I don't think... now you get the sense. You know, for me, it was in my daughter's school. They were celebrating with great vigour Halloween, but I asked her about World AIDS Day. Are they doing anything? And they're not doing anything. So I was a bit disappointed because they're not doing anything in the school. But maybe that's an isolated incident. 136 votes, very close.
So we've been asking all morning, is the world winning the war against HIV and AIDS? And very close, as you said, 51% saying yes, we are.
Yeah, we are. We'll call it 50-50 with a positive outlook right now. Of course, the question of the day, today is the 1st of December. December, boss, that's what it is. In South Africa, it means something. Now, what has your 2016 been like? How has it treated you? How's 2016 treated you, Rene?
I think I've had a good year.
Yeah?
But, you know, I've seen a lot of people complaining about this year. People just want this year to end. They're tired.
Do you think South Africans complain too much? You complain about anything and everything?
Let's see. Lechasa says, I wish those HIV activists should visit Zebemachopong because young girls are affected every day. Yeah, that, of course, is
we were talking about... We were talking about 2016, but we've got the wrong comments up, but never let the facts get in the way of a good story, as it were. See what Piwe talks about. Well, there, we've lost it, unfortunately. There we are. Anyhow, let's move on, Rene. Let's move on and take a look at the morning's news.
Lots of news, Evan. Today is World AIDS Day, with national celebrations in Davidson and Kuruleni. This year's theme is "It is in our hands to end HIV and TB." And Fidel Castro's ashes have begun a marathon procession across Cuba to his final resting place in the east of the island. And the oil producers group OPEC has agreed to cut production in an effort to boost prices, provided key countries outside the organization take similar steps. Now, before we get into that news, let's go over to Eben for some sports update.
Yeah, Kendall's not here. Apparently his wife is sick and he had to stay at home. So our condolences to him. But in football last night, one of the great goals in South African history was scored against Orlando Pirates. Let's have a look.
Masuluke is inside the penalty area as well, and it heads over to Masuluke. Look at him. Keeper goes on the adventurous route. Masuluke scores! Unbelievable!
Yeah, sensational last gasp equaliser saw Baroka FC claim a 1-1 draw against Orlando Pirates in the ABSA Premiership. Then thousands of soccer fans in the Brazilian city of Chapeco filled the stadium in a moving vigil to the victims of the deadly Colombia plane crash. Well, those will be your top sports headlines later at this hour. Let's go to the news desk and Rene for more.
Yes, thank you very much, Eben. Of course, a very big event happening today in Davidson. Let's cross to our reporter, Griselda Lewis, who is at the Sinaba Stadium in Davidson. A very good morning to you, Griselda.
Well, a very good morning to you, Renee. Welcome to this special broadcast. We're coming to you live from the Sinaba Stadium in Davidson, in Ekurhuleni. This is where the commemoration on this World AIDS Day, the program will get underway here this morning. We're expecting the Deputy President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, to give an address on this commemoration. And certainly looking at South Africa and the great strides it's made in dealing with the scourge of HIV and AIDS in this country. You know that South Africa to date boasts hosts one of the biggest programs around the world relating to HIV treatment. We're talking about 3.5 million people who are on life-saving antiretrovirals. And one of the other things that certainly, South Africa can certainly look to in terms of what it's done to deal with the scourge of HIV and AIDS. We're looking at massive reductions when it comes to mother-to-child transmission. But one of the major concerns, I must say, at this point is that the infection rates amongst adolescents and young women. We're expecting a lot of that to come under the spotlight here at this commemoration today. But of course, South Africa, as it continues to put many programs in place. Just yesterday, we saw the launch of the HIV vaccine trial, where we're looking at dealing at these new infections, ending these new infections that South Africa is so concerned about. Many of the programs that we're seeing at this point are really centered around young women and how basically to educate them more on how to deal with the scourge of HIV and AIDS and how to protect themselves. So much of the program will be centered around that. You'd know that South Africa, according to UNAIDS at this point, says that 7 million people are living with HIV in South Africa. But let's get a bit more details exactly about what the program will entail today and what the major focus will be. Let's chat now to Dr. Ramnik Aluwalia, who is the Country Director on Higher Education Program for HIV and AIDS. Doc, thank you very much for your time this morning. I think much of the focus that we're seeing in South Africa this morning pertaining to how we continue dealing with the scourge of HIV and AIDS, the focus has really moved towards educating young women. Why is this?
We are an unfortunate country where 1,000 cases of HIV become every day in South Africa. We are the same unfortunate country where 2,000 young girls become HIV every week. The science and evidence has shown that the new infections are coming between the age of 15 and 24. Now, where are these 15 to 24? They are youth, they are young people. They're either in universities, they're in colleges, in schools, or they're outside in the community at this moment. And we need to reach out to them. Many social and structural drivers, poverty, lack of education. The epidemic is in such a way that just imagine you are an African girl. You either come from a village or a community. You have a child. Now, just imagine if I have to lose you. You're not only looking after your own child, but you're also looking after your sister's child, your brother's child, because you're one of those educated people that we have in South Africa who's taken the courage as a woman to come out from a village to become educated. Just imagine if I have to lose you, how many orphans I will have. Those orphans will again become poor, will not go to schools, will be uneducated, and HIV comes again. So it's a cycle. The only way we can break this cycle is if we make our educated South Africans grow, live longer, even if they are HIV positive. HIV is like any other chronic disease. I'm a doctor, I'm a medical doctor. So if you have diabetes or you have hypertension, if you come to me at a stage when you have already a kidney failure and I put you on treatment, the treatment is not going to work. Similarly, HIV, if you come at a stage of AIDS, young people only go to the clinic when they're too sick, when you're too old, when they're literally in a bad stage, when TB has come. But if we can catch young people early, if we can find those young infections early, we can put them on early treatment, and science has shown how ARVs can change life.
Doctor, I really want to chat more about that. Let me just apologize to our viewers, first of all. It's extremely windy here, and the sound may not be so great. But these programs, then, that are being put in place, I know that the Deputy President is going to engage with young people here today, to talk about many of these phenomena that we're seeing. We've got this new phenomena of blessers and blessies and sugar daddies. That's been one of the issues that we've been dealing with as a country for a very long time. How do you tailor your program so that's able to speak to young people? They're able to understand what the risks are and how they're able to protect themselves to ensure that they're not affected or infected by the scourge.
I'll give you a practical example. 10 young girls. The Minister of Health wanted to launch for teenage pregnancies. We also have a similar challenge called teenage pregnancies, and I want to relate this to HIV/AIDS. So for the teenage pregnancies, we are putting the subdermal implants inside the skin. But what we found out, when we used to put the implant, the girls used to remove it because it's a contraception. But what we were not doing right was we were not educating the young girls. So I picked up 10 girls deep down in a village called Ijitwa, which is down in Tata. We got a TVET college called King Hansa TVET College. 10 girls, and we capacitated them on implants. Explained them what this implant is about. Well, it's a contraception. It's not a condom. It's a contraception. It's going to help you. But you still need to wear condom for HIV. You need to be protected from teenage pregnancies. A young girl cannot be pregnant because it's not good for your womb. In 1 month, I got 196 young girls who got that implant in 1 month in a small town called Iditua. Now, this transformation can only happen if young, educated South Africans or young students, so peer-to-peer, a young person to a young person is the right way. And that's the only way we'll win this. And education is the right form. So education not from this man with no hair, education from a young girl to another young girl, telling her what it is, what it means to live with HIV, what it means to take ARVs, what it means to get this implant and not become pregnant, what it means to refuse a blesser who drives with his fancy car, comes into the college and asks the girl, can she come with me, because he will give her either a cell phone or probably a small house to live in.
But this whole phenomena centers around perhaps what some would say is poverty. University students, perhaps who come from the rural villages which you spoke to in Aitu, Juaniam Tata, would tell you about homes in the rural villages where parents are struggling to make ends meet. How do you tailor such a program then when they've moved to the city of big lights and are lured by these blessers with fancy cars, as you say, and tailor a program to ensure that the program is also inclusive of speaking to the issue of poverty and the challenges perhaps that it comes with to ensure that the girls are not lured by this because of circumstances such as that?
So continuously, dialogues, education in the most innovative way. You're a radio journalist. DJ Fresh is an amazing radio journalist who speaks on 5FM. I partnered 10 radio journalists, community radio journalists. My army in one year has become to 196 radio journalists. Now, radio journalists in a comic way, in an entertaining way, in a musical way, engage young people on daily basis with these students in universities. Now, I can't change poverty in one day. But what I can do is, I can give education to the same student. I can tell that student, maybe you are poor today, but this education will make you come out of that poverty. You will find a job. If not a job, you will do something productive to earn a living, even if it's an informal settlement or in a formal settlement. Your child will not be an orphan. Your child will get education. Your child will not go through what you're going through. And that's the only way we will change South Africa. So dialogues, peer education, education through curriculums. Parents need to speak to their children, schools need to speak to their children, universities need to speak to their children. Children are still children. Adolescents are adolescents. We were lucky that we did not get HIV when we were adolescent. All I want is more and more South Africans to step up, good media like yourself, SABC, to come up more and explain to the parents and guardians why this country has 7 million young people or South Africans living with HIV. We can't lose our economy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Always very insightful speaking to you, Dr. Ramnik Aluwalia, who is the Country Director on Higher Education Program relating to HIV and AIDS. You'd know the fight against HIV and AIDS is certainly a global fight. And the US presidents, of course, have come up with various programs, including PEPFAR. And one of the programs, I guess, that deals with this is a program called Dreams, where you've got many young people who are going out themselves to go and educate others about how they can stay away from risky situations that would see them ultimately infected with HIV. And one of those brave, I guess, young ladies here is Karabo Tsotesi. She's one of the ambassadors for Dreams as well. Karabo, if you could just tell us just a bit about what Dreams is. I know that you go out and speak to a lot of young women about the risks associated with HIV and AIDS and many of the other phenomena, I guess, that you are faced with as young people.
Oh, okay. Dreams Program is all about an everyday going thing that young girls go through and girls that engage. It's about us young girls coming together, having youth dialogues, having those sessions, those sister talks. You know, as young girls, we also relate to each other in daily basics. Yes. It's not all about you being my friend or you being my sister, where else we can... interbreed. However, we can all be sisters, even though I don't know you. But then the challenges that you face, maybe I've faced them, or maybe my sister is facing them, or a sister whom I've known. It's all about that, coming together, sharing the topics that we as young people face, and we as young people see to it that they are gonna be challenges to us. So yeah, we are dealing with such topics as young people.
Well, there are many concerns at this point, and as you were hearing the doctor speak there, he did indicate that South Africa is still very concerned about the rate of infection amongst young women, adolescents. And you're young yourself. You have these dialogues with your peers. What are some of the challenges that they've spoken to you about the challenges, the risks that they may come into contact with, and how do you guys plan to perhaps find solutions as young people to ensure that you remain safe?
Okay, for one, as girls, we know that people just stigmatize us by the way we dress, and they just say that we are victimizing ourselves by the way we look or how we dress, or sometimes they think us looking good, it's us putting ourselves out there for boys to come hunting for us, and which is, of course, it's not true. You know, we are young girls and we're free-spirited, and we just want to grow. This is a society whereby we need to feel safe as young girls, and having our parents to protect us, but then coming across to fathers who are raping their girls, raping their nieces, it's just so tragic. Having young girls being infected by their uncles or fathers, it's just all wrong. So us as young girls, we say, don't feel unsafe in your own home, feel safe, be comfortable, but then don't fear to voice out your voice. Just say, talk to someone every time when something wrong comes across your way, and then someone definitely is gonna hear you and you'll get help. So don't be afraid to voice out your voice. Dreams is here to hear and listen to the problems young people face. So we are listening here. We are here to help you. We are not here to take away your HIV status, but we are here to adhere to you undergoing that treatment, because nowadays HIV, it's not about you having a deadlock, you are not gonna die because of HIV. Just adhere to your treatment, and then you'll be fine. Have a healthy diet and have that support system at home. It's no longer that time of the life whereby people are now afraid of sharing their HIV status. It's now in the open. The society now knows of it. So just talk and talk and talk and talk. Maybe you are not seeing the results yourself, but then you are actually helping someone else. Yes. So we are all infected or affected by HIV. So we are here to help each other. That's why we all interbreed in life. We are those kind of species in life, to interbreed with each other.
Absolutely well done. Very inspiring young people there who are also taking up the fight of the scourge of HIV and AIDS, going out to various communities, trying to understand what are the many challenges that young people face that could see them affected or even infected by the scourge of HIV and AIDS in this country. Going out, having various dialogues. You heard there one of the major concerns, and specifically South Africa, as it continues with its program to try and ensure that as minimum people as possible are infected by HIV. You've got these young people who are going around to the various townships and having discussions with their peers on how not to, for example, fall prey to some of these phenomena that we've seen relating to blessers. It's really a conversation that's really stoked the conversation relating to HIV and AIDS in this country. So really the South African government, its focus is very much on young people. If we look at the rate of infections towards young people, it's still quite alarming, and one of the issues that the program itself would need to address. We'll certainly bring you a lot more. We're expecting the Deputy President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, to give the address at this commemoration here this morning. We're not sure at this stage exactly what time that will take place, but there was also a march, I must say, Renee, as well, by the Treatment Action Campaign a bit earlier on, and they were handing over a memorandum of demands to the Deputy President, and some of the calls that they are making, they were saying that every single one or person in South Africa who is infected with HIV should receive treatment, and essentially there should be condoms in all schools. So that's just some of the demands that are contained in that memorandum. So we're really expecting the issue of HIV/AIDS, so that's South Africa's progress, and I guess the road that we need to continue traversing to really come under the spotlight here, and how South Africa plans to put more of these strategic programs in place to ensure that we're able to tackle the scourge of HIV and AIDS in this country. We'll hand over to you in studio. We'll certainly bring you that live coverage again once the Deputy President also arrives to give that address at the commemoration.
Griselda in the thick of it, battling the wind, battling the elements, but still doing a super job there. She's live at the SABC Stadium. That's in Davidton, here on the East Rand in Gauteng. She'll be giving us, well, another update before the Deputy President delivers the keynote address there a little bit later. Now, the first national CD4 viral load monitoring dashboard, an online tool that monitors CD4 counts and viral loads in South Africa's HIV-positive patients, was launched last week. Now, viral load is the best predictor of an HIV-positive patient's response to treatment. The dashboard displays and analyzes data in a way that healthcare professionals involved in managing the epidemic can easily engage with. It provides information at both the national, provincial, district, single facility and individual levels, as well as for designated age groups. Now, in studio with us is pathologist at the NHLS and at the School of Pathology at Wits University's Dr. Sergio Carmona, to discuss the importance and the implications of the new systems. Dr. Carmona, very good morning to you.
Morning, Evan. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Tell us about this dashboard and tell us about how this will change the fight.
So the dashboard is, as you mentioned, an online tool which has made millions of records available in the NHLS, accessible to those who are engaging with patients or managing the program as a whole, from, as you said, from all the way down to a facility, so a healthcare worker, a nurse, and all the way to National Department of Health to see how the epidemic is being managed.
I see it comes down to the individual as well. Can you kind of use this dashboard and kind of look at how it affects you?
So it's mainly designed for the healthcare worker that is managing the patient. So as you know, there's those three targets, the UNA targets of the 3 90s. The first 90 is trying to get 90% of those who are infected to know their status. The second 90 is to get those who know their status to be on treatment. And the third one, which is what we're focusing on, is to have a viral load done and suppressed, and there are 1,000 copies. So that's the idea, to help us.
Now, we've got some examples of it on screen. If you can just talk to what's on screen and maybe tell us what a healthcare professional would see when they engage with this.
Yeah, so you can see the data provides a national picture of how we're doing in both CD4 counts, viral loads, and other parameters. So a healthcare worker can literally zoom into the district or sub-district where they work and see how the clinic around them is doing in terms of viral load suppression, that third 90 that we're interested in focusing on. And then they can actually go down to their particular facility to see how many patients did they see last week, how many of those are not suppressing, and help them track them to ensure that they're adherent or on the right medicines.
Does this also give you a sort of national view where you can see sort of potential problem areas before they explode, that kind of thing?
Exactly. That's exactly. So it's a monitoring evaluation tool, if you want, so we can identify early hotspots. Today, we're talking a lot about adolescent new infections, you know, those 15 to 24-year-olds that are contributing to the epidemic, and it's key to focus on them. And the other thing you can see here is that we're integrating not only the NHLS data, so the NHLS is the sole provider of pathology services for the public sector, together with the Department of Health data. And so what we're trying to see is that the Department of Health, as you heard, reports about 3.5 million people on treatment. How many of those are actually getting a viral load done, and how many are actually being effectively treated with antiretrovirals?
The one thing that kind of stands out for me that you touched on is now you'll be able to segmentize it a little bit and look at individual age groups, for instance.
Correct.
We know that 15 to 24 or even 15 to 35 in some instances is the problem area in South Africa. Interventions within that sort of group or segment, is it working? Are you happy with what's being done there?
So, yeah, it is. I think often children and adolescents are neglected when we monitor programs, and this tool will help us narrow it down and focus on girls and adolescents that are getting new infections.
Will we be able to then have viral suppression by 2020 as some of the goals that are being put forward? Are you hopeful of that kind of thing?
It's a really ambitious target, but we are hopeful. We are putting absolutely every effort that we can to ensure that we achieve that goal by 2020, which will hopefully see elimination of HIV and AIDS by 2030.
We've now seen, of course, the launch of the vaccine trials here in South Africa. It's expected to last for the best part of 5 years. What's your expectation with regards to this? And if you could maybe give some advice to those who don't quite understand how this thing works.
So there are many preventative tools. This is one of them. And as Linda Gale-Burker said in the earlier news, earlier trials were only hopeful. I think this new vaccine, the potency, is going to be a lot stronger, and we are really, really hopeful that we're going to see better results.
UN has a 90-90-90 target for 2020 as well. Can you just talk to that and maybe explain to those who don't know what that is and how it's supposed to work?
Okay, so it is a real campaign to ensure that by 2030 there's complete elimination of HIV. What do we need to do to get to 2030 is by 2020 have attained 3 goals. The first is to make sure in the context of South Africa that every infected individual knows their status, or at least 90%. Of that 90%, that at least 90% are accessing drugs. And of those who are accessing drugs, that get the viral load down, but also that the viral load is suppressed, which means to have less than 1,000 copies. In South Africa, the figure estimated is about 6.8 million people to be infected. Currently, about 76% in South Africa know their status, so we need to still work on ensuring that more South Africans know that they are infected. Treatment, there's about 3.3 million people on treatment, so that drops it to 65. And then of those that are getting a viral load, about 45% are suppressed. So we have a way to go, but there are initiatives to ensure that we get there.
We're running a poll. Before I let you go, I want you to just give us your view on the poll. We're asking our viewers the following question. Do we have it up? Is the world winning the war against HIV and AIDS? What do you think? Where are we?
I think, yes, we are making some progress. More people are getting access to treatment. We are more aware of key populations that previously were neglected. And as you mentioned earlier, there are initiatives like the HIV prevention vaccine from HVTN 702. So we are in a better place than we were a few years ago.
Well, that's the good news. Thank you very much. On a positive note, we'll end. That's the pathologist at the NHLS and at the School of Pathology at Wits University, Dr. Sergio Carmona, joining us in our studio here in Johannesburg today. Thank you for coming in today to talk to us. Now, you've seen it's 50-50, yes, 141 votes on our poll, 50-50 that we are winning it. Even the good doctor told us, yes, we're making some strides and we should be a little bit more positive. Let's take a look at some of your tweets with regards to that question and the poll. Lachasa speaks to Newsroom. He says, I wish those HIV activists could visit ZB Mokopong because young girls are affected every single day. Yes, but we are fighting this scourge every single day. Siva P says, I think the world is not winning HIV yes, because other people who has HIV, they do not use their treatment. Yes, there is some sort of problem. Unati says, I don't think the world is winning because every second of every minute someone is infected. Yes, but also someone goes on to treatment during that same time. Siafana talks about, I don't think so, because each and every day there is someone infected with AIDS and HIV. It's a rather dour outlook today. Tsepo, as perhaps the rest of the world may be, Africa has a long way to go. Why do you say that, Tsepo? Anyhow, we're talking about World AIDS Day today. Let's go over to Rene West, who has a little bit more.
Yes, thank you very much, Eb. And of course, still continuing with the discussion on World AIDS Day. Now, although the new vaccine trial has given a glimmer of hope to the nation, shocking figures still remain. Now, around 2,000 young women in South Africa are newly infected with HIV each week. And some research suggests that South Africa currently has around 18 million people on treatment, but millions are still in need of assistance. Now, Doctors Without Borders has some of the largest HIV and AIDS programs around the country. And to tell us more about this, joining us from our Sea Point studios is Doctors Without Borders maternal child health nurse, Nompumelelo Matangana. A very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, and I'm also thankful to be here.
Now, let's start with the research. The figures are still quite alarming, but have we started to see a decrease at all in the newly infected rates?
We are not really seeing a drop in the infected rates, in the newly infected rates. We are not really seeing a drop. But there are lots of programs that are being done that we are trying to make people aware that if you are HIV positive, you have to stay on your treatment so that your viral load can be suppressed. We can only see that drop if our viral suppressions are more than 45%, which we are at the current moment.
Now, with the new trial, the vaccine trial that's just begun, what are your views on this? And are we perhaps being too hopeful for this trial?
I think, my opinion, we have to try almost everything that we can put our hands on. The vaccine is fine, let's try. Because as we all know that we are all concerned about the youth of today, the age group between 15 and 35. That's where we are concerned, and that's where the incidents are very high. So anything that can be preventing, and we should be really trying almost everything. We should also be trying, programs that they stay negative, motivate the negative ones too.
Now, MSF has had a great progress with rolling out the ARV treatment programs, but you also say that you're not going to reach the international targets of 90-90-90 by 2020. Why is this?
The problem is we are concentrating in the urban areas. If we look at the 90-90-90, that means that we need to go. We need to find these patients. We need to find these adolescents. We have to go to the communities. We have to see mobile clinics that are out there. We have to put, programs at schools. We have to put condoms in school, whereby we know that if they test and they test positive, they can be put on treatment. And whilst they are on treatment, they can be monitored closely where their viral loads will be done. And we need a low viral suppression, and we need lots of numbers. We need to increase our numbers. So at the moment, there are still barriers that will make us not to reach the 90-90 in this due course.
Now, I know it's a very busy day for MSF as you have a number of programs around the country, especially in Khayelitsha. Can you tell us about some of the work that you have been doing throughout the year with regards to HIV and AIDS patients?
What currently we are doing in Khayelitsha, we are doing very well in Khayelitsha. We are really putting lots of strides in Khayelitsha. What we have done, we've started antiretroviral drugs in 2003, as everybody knows that MSF was the first program in the public sector to prove that we can use antiretroviral drugs and our people can stay longer. What we have seen now, we've got lots of problems where some of the patients are still failing. And we have started programs where we are monitoring them closely, a risk of treatment failure program where we monitor them closely. And we've got adherence clubs where we take the treatment to their communities. The adherence clubs, we do them at home, we do them in the clinics, we do them in the libraries. So we are looking at ways where we can really treat them closer to home. Because at the end of the day, the clinics the clinics that are still flooded, the patients are not going to those clinics because they avoid staying in the clinic for so long. So we are trying various things in Khayelitsha. We are going to try now the 6-monthly treatment where we'll try to fast track them in the clinic, but they go straight to pharmacy like any other chronic medication. They just pick up their medication, they go from the clinic. We do have evening clubs where they go after work, they go to the clinic and pick up their medication. We even have youth-friendly clinics where we are trying our youth to go to the clinic after school. We even have male service clinics where we know that males don't want to go to the clinic that is full. So they do have we've got 2 male clinics in Khayelitsha, and one is also having an evening after our clinic.
Now, I know MSF has also had a couple of challenges throughout the year, especially with regards to delays in receiving medication for some of the clinics. But you also have been calling on government to assist you with this. And what would you like government to further do for you?
What we'd love to see the government doing, we'd love to see the government helping us when we are trying to put up these programs, because at times there are a lot of red tapes around protocols and lots of bureaucracy, because even now we're trying that schools should be having condoms. We know that the high incidence is around the youth and adolescents in those age where they are at schools, but still there are SGPs, the school governing bodies, that are not allowing the condoms at school. So we need the government to work with us on some of the policies. The other thing that we would love to see the government doing for us, it's for mobile clinics. There should be mobile clinics so that we can get the deep rural people, the young youth that are in the rural areas where nobody is looking after them. We'd love to see more of the mobile clinics going around all those areas so that at least we know that we are accessing them. If they are tested, they can be treated and they can be monitored, like taking the viral load.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and continue to do the good work that you do in Khayelitsha and across the country.
Thank you.
That, of course, is Nompumelelo Matangana from MSF telling us about some of their work. They've been doing extensive work across the country for many years, especially with regards to HIV and AIDS. Very important. Well, it's time now to take a break, but stay tuned. We'll be right back.
South Africa remains in the grip of a dry spell. It's led to water restrictions imposed across the country. About 20,000 cubic centimeters are being released per second. Authorities say that it could take 10 days. In the meantime, they're appealing to residents to use water sparingly. Transnet says that it's increased its revenue despite the weak economic conditions affecting volumes that it handled.
The company says going forward it will be investing in mergers and acquisition opportunities to expand Transnet services. It says while it does not believe South Africa will be downgraded, it has however begun negotiations with lenders to prepare for any eventualities.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at other news. Now, a surprising study in monkeys involving an antibody used to treat Crohn's disease has raised new hopes for a so-called functional cure for HIV treatments. Now, the treatment allows patients to skip the daily cocktail of pills they must take to keep their disease in check.
News worth celebrating on World AIDS Day, December 1st. And surprisingly, it came from a study in monkeys involving an antibody used to treat Crohn's disease. Researchers in Bethesda, Maryland, are steps closer to helping patients keep their HIV in check without the need for heavy medication and a slew of side effects. They are in the early stages of testing a new treatment on humans that would effectively put HIV in sustained remission. The study came out of the lab of Dr. Anthony Fauci, who hailed life-saving advances in HIV treatment.
I would think that the advances made in treatment as well as in prevention with pre-exposure prophylaxis are some of the most breathtaking advances in science that have been made in anyone's memory.
Clinical trial patient Manny Baez says he didn't think twice about volunteering to help.
I had read lots of stories lately promising, a cure, a vaccine for HIV, and I felt the need to do something to help.
The medication made by Japanese drug maker Takeda is said to control HIV without the need for ongoing treatment. A second effort combines a therapeutic vaccine from Johnson & Johnson with an immune system booster from Gilead. Advocates are hailing the treatment as a possible functional cure to HIV.
Well, isn't that just interesting? But moving away from World AIDS Day for just a moment, the ANC has paid tribute to the late Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Party leaders and supporters filled up the OR Tambo Hall in Khayelitsha on the Cape Flats. The memorial service led by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, who also streamed live to Cuba's capital city of Havana.
Fidel Castro, a charismatic internationalist and revolutionary. ANC leaders and supporters gathered in Khayelitsha to mourn, but also to celebrate Castro for his ideals and the role he played in liberating South Africa during apartheid.
We honor him and pay tribute to him because he was fearless, he was courageous, he was principled, he was disciplined. And as we think about his life, we also begin to imagine another icon that we had in our own lives, and that's Nelson Mandela.
The Deputy President also used the service to encourage all to emulate Castro's ideals and the Cuban work ethic. Castro was remembered for his ideals in social cohesion. Leaders lauded him for his ethical leadership, selflessness, and internationalist perspective, a champion of the poor.
We've come to say today, thank you to Comrade Fidel, the real El Commandant. We've come to say today, thank you to the volunteers that contributed to defend our comrades in Quito Carnival.
Nomawethu Solwandle, SABC News, Khayelitsha.
Meanwhile, in Cuba, tens of thousands of people have lined the route of a procession that is carrying the ashes of Fidel Castro to his final resting place. The funeral cortege is on a 3-day journey to the east of Cuba. The caravan is going back along the roads Castro and his revolutionaries took in 1959. It formed part of their victory march to Havana to build a communist society on the doorstep of the United States. Castro ruled Cuba for half a century until 2008. His death on Friday at the age of 90 has plunged the Caribbean island into 9 days of mourning. Castro's ashes will be interred on Sunday. In other news, oil prices have surged nearly 10% to above $50 a barrel after the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, also known as OPEC, agreed to cut production for the first time in 8 years. Now, OPEC says that overall production will be reduced by 1.2 million barrels a day. This is about 3% of the group's output. Now, the agreement represents a major reversal in policy for Saudi Arabia, which 2 years ago tried to undermine other high-cost producers by raising its output. OPEC says it expects producers from outside the group, including Russia, to join with additional cuts totaling 600,000 barrels a day. The OPEC cuts were deeper than many analysts had expected, amounting to about 1% of global production. Now, the 14-member group hopes the output cuts will help shrink a supply glut that has been fed in part by the U.S. shale boom and depressed oil prices for more than 2 years. Moving further afield, Ghana is headed to a tight general election on the 7th of December, and some of the main issues are unemployment, corruption and struggling economy. President John Mahama is bidding for a second and final 4-year term in office under a National Democratic Congress ticket. Mahama has made proposals to boost industry, energy, infrastructure, health and education.
His main opponent, Nana Akufo-Addo, and his new patriotic party blame Mahama for squandering the wealth the country has amassed since it began producing oil in 2010. Akufo-Addo has vowed to give every constituency the equivalent of $1 million a year to alleviate poverty by installing basic services if his party is voted into power. Ghana has lost its reputation as one of Africa's economic stars as it faces slumping global prices for its exports of gold and oil. Mabel Simpson is an accessories designer and entrepreneur working in Accra. She started her business in 2010 with the equivalent of $50 in capital. Today, her design label, Sims, sells products in a store in Accra and online for clients making orders from all over the world.
It's quite strange that I'm still a bit undecisive about who I'm going to vote for, because I've seen the NPP in power, I've seen the NDC in power, and every party or every government has its good sides and bad sides. But I'm definitely December 7th, I'm going to vote, and I know I'm going to make the right decision.
Ghana exports gold, oil and cocoa, but has suffered from a slump in global commodity prices and macroeconomic instability in the form of inflation that stood at 15.8% last month.
Now, this is Trends, of course, your one-stop serving of all that's juicy and trending in the world of entertainment and showbiz. My name, of course, is Refill Wemulwa.
I'm Dr. Selom Daung, and this is our talk.
A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly.
My name is Dumile Matez.
William Mulabati.
My name is Mpo. What time is it? It's question time.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. You're still at Newsroom. Yes, I'm going to try and give you a sports update. Next, we start with football. Local football here in South Africa. Barocco FC may be in 10th position on the log, but the team with the talk of all the midweek ABSA Premiership fixtures. They've secured a point from the encounter with Orlando Pirates when the match ended 1-1 after a moment of sheer brilliance by the goalkeeper. The first half ended goalless. 3 minutes into the second half, Pirates went a goal ahead. Defender Justice Chabalala easily finished from a corner.
From Barocco in Orlando Pirates, a vacant catch. Masuluke looks as if he might have picked up an injury. Pirates will celebrate.
Now the visitors can be forgiven for believing the 3 points were in the bag because it was only 6 minutes into injury time that this happens, and the status changed. Barocco keeper Oscarin Masuluke netted an acrobatic equalizer when the Buccaneers failed to clear a late corner. The goal has become a social media sensation, trending on Twitter and with a number of videos being posted on YouTube of this goal in the last 24 hours. What a goal. Pity it's against my own team. Ajax Cape Town stunned Mamelodi Sundowns in other results, beating them 2-0 in the Premiership match at Cape Town Stadium last night. Let's take a look at this and some of the other results from the matches played around the country. Of course, Kaizer Chiefs, as we said, they drew 1-1 with Cape Town City. SuperSport United were too good for Wits, beating them 2-0. That was in Mbombela. Then a 1-1 draw between Maritzburg United and Chippa at the Harry Gwala Stadium. That was on Tuesday night. Wednesday saw, of course, Ajax Cape Town beating Sundowns, Golden Arrows and Polokwane City, well down at the Kings Wellatini Stadium. They were involved in a 3-3 thriller of a draw. Stars, Free State Stars that is, they beat the Platinum Stars 3-1. Of course, Barocca's incredible late goal at the new Peter Makaba Stadium saw them snatch a point against Pirates, and Highlands Park and Bloem Celtic, well, they played out to a goalless drab draw at Makulo. Of course, the world's eyes are on this story. Soccer players who didn't travel with Brazil's Chapecoense team on the ill-fated flight to Colombia were at a memorial service in the club's Arena Conda in Chapeco in Brazil to honor their late teammates alongside thousands and thousands of fans. Now, the fans were due to celebrate the side's biggest match in its history against Atlético Nacional in Medellín after the team made it to the Copa Sudamericana final. But in a bitter twist to a fairy tale story for Chapecoense, those players left behind are heading memorials for their teammates. The plane crashed into a Colombian mountain after it reportedly ran out of fuel, had no electrical power, and was preparing for an emergency landing, according to the pilot's final words. Only 6 people on board the Lamia Bolivia charter flight survived, including 3 of the Chapecoense soccer squad. The disaster happened on Monday night, killing 71 and sending shockwaves around the soccer world. Meanwhile, audio from a Colombian flight control center shows the pilot of the Lamia Airlines plane that crashed had radioed that he was running out of fuel and needed to make an emergency landing. The Lamia pilot told the control tower at the airport in Medellín that he was in trouble, but priority was given to a plane from airline Viva Colombia, which had also reported problems. After several requests for instructions to land, including altitude and course directions, the operator directed the flight to approach the airport runway, which was wet with rain. The Lamia pilot also said he was experiencing electrical difficulties before uttering a final Jesus when the radio then fell silent. Very sad story. Now, we move on. Here in South Africa, of course, big golf kicks off today, and yesterday Christian Bezuidenhout got a shot in the arm ahead of today's Alfred Daniel Championship when he became the first winner of the par 3 challenge at Leopard Creek. Bezuidenhout needed just 1 playoff hole after finishing tied on 4 under par with Eric van Rooyen and Jean-Paul Strydom. Now, the newly opened par 3 course at Leopard Creek allowed the participants to sharpen their short games ahead of the tournament that starts today. Bezuidenhout batted the 8th and 9th holes to force his way into the playoff. A near-perfect shot then saw him narrowly miss a hole-in-one, but left him with a tap-in to clinch the title. Now, in our later bulletins, we'll give you the early scores coming in from Leopard Creek. It should be a wonderful week's golf. Of course, Charles Schwartzel is the favourite there to make it a 5th title in a row. Yes, he's won 4 times at Leopard Creek already. Interesting, very exciting. We'll keep you posted. Time now for us to say goodbye and leave you with a look at the weather on the continent.
Welcome from the weather desk. It is expected to be a hot day here in southern Africa, so be ready for temperatures to soar up to about 42 degrees in some parts and even 43 in Skukuza. And taking a look at the rainfall, looks like we're expecting some showers just along the eastern coast over KwaZulu-Natal, some parts of Lesotho, and over Mpumalanga province today and tomorrow. But mostly going to be quite a clear day for South Africa, as well as over the southern part of Namibia. Nothing in terms of rainfall expected along the SADC regions, especially towards the western side, except only for hot weather that you should be looking out for. Upington reaching a maximum of 39 degrees, and a hot day continuing right across the northern and the central part of South Africa. Pretoria is at 38, 34 for Johannesburg, and over much of the East Rand. For all those that live in places such as Roodepoort, you do expect a hot day over the western side of Johannesburg. Bloemfontein is at 35, 31 for DR, and Durban reaching a maximum of 25 degrees. Madagascar should see some very temperatures, 28 for Mazanga, and a drop to 26 for Antananarivo. Bulawayo over Zimbabwe is at 34 degrees. We're seeing those upper 30s towards Beitbridge, and lower 30s for Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe. Maputo is at 35 degrees. Rainy weather is expected along those parts. And also, as you stretch further over Central Africa, do expect partly cloudy skies, widespread showers along the central and the southern parts, going all the way towards the southern part of the DRC. That's where you should expect a bit more rainfall. And clear weather for Cameroon, as well as over Central African Republic. Banjul, in fact, reaching a maximum of 38 degrees. And a hot weather towards Brazzaville and over Kinshasa, as it reaches a maximum of 13. 31 for Luanda and 22 for Addis Ababa. Juba reaching a maximum of 36. Nairobi is at 23. Some partly cloudy skies are expected towards Damascus, Baghdad, and over Cairo. And you can see along those parts there are some small possibilities of veld fires in those areas. So if you're going to be up towards the northern parts here, that's where you should expect most of your rainfall. And then clear conditions and dry weather is expected just along Agadez and Al Jouf over the southern part of Egypt and in towards Libya. We're expecting clear conditions over into the weekend and basically the next week as well. It's not expected to be raining there, but we'll see temperatures dropping, 18 for Cairo, 10 for Baghdad, so cooler weather is expected there. And just out of your shot there, all the way towards the northern part, as you move in towards Russia, Moscow is expected to be extremely cold. And then hot weather towards Mecca at 33 degrees, 24 towards Sana'a and Djibouti, 28. Nothing changes much for West Africa. A bit of clouds coming up along the coastal parts, and clear weather for the northern and the central part of West Africa. Timbuktu is expected to be quite hot. Bamako, Ouagadougou, going to Niamey. And for all those that are going to be in Lagos, Lome, as well as Accra, do expect similar conditions. It's going to be all dry for the next couple of days. Nothing coming up in terms of rainfall. This afternoon, temperatures will drop to 21 for Las Palmas, and a hot day for Niamey as well as in N'Djamena. Bamako is at 38 degrees. And for all those that are going to be in Bakau, expect a maximum of about 24, including that of Marrakech. So a bit of a cool day is expected for northwestern Africa. That's it from the weather side. Do stay tuned. There'll be more here on SABC's News Channel.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
A conscious move from being a street kid to being a barrister of note.
Keep on praying for me to make a better life.
A creative application of the mind on an essential need, water in wheelbarrow containers.
How about if we come up with an idea of an enclosed container that sits on top of the frame of a wheelbarrow?
With the sharing of resources, a boy with Russell Silver syndrome receives medication.
The fact that you just said to me, well, you're covered for next month, that's amazing.
So that's the medication.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
We are one of the 22 high-burden countries, and out of that we're number 6, following countries like India, China, and with huge population.
Cough, night sweats, weight loss and fever, and cough being the most important of those. So, and especially if the cough lasts for more than 3 weeks, then you really have to worry and get tested for TB.
The motivation is to affect behavior change, particularly with people who cough and who may be carrying the bacterium. So encouraging people to use their elbow.
For more on health, join your host Dr. Selo Motaung every Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m.
Yes, it's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Thursday, the 1st of December 2016. It's World AIDS Day today. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Renee Vest. Of course, very important discussions that we have been having here on Newsroom today. Of course, our focus is on the latest trials and research on HIV and AIDS. And we're conducting a poll about World AIDS Day today.
That poll, we're asking you that question, of course, what do you make of, in fact, first, there's the question first. In fact, we got them both ways around. But the question really is on World AIDS Day, is the world winning the war against HIV/AIDS? And so far, Renee?
Yes, 51% saying yes. Very close, though, Elvis.
Very close. 49% are saying no, but there's a trial going on, and we'll give you some more about that. But it's the 1st of December, and everyone seems to be getting ready to party. On our question of the day, which you've seen earlier on your screen there, hello, December boss. How did 2016 treated you? That is the question. How has 2016 treated you? Was it bad? Was it good? Or how was it? Let us know what's on your mind on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. But first, the news headlines with Renee. Oh, there's some comments, we believe. Before we go to the headlines, let's check on the comments. Here behind us, Victor Zwane says, it's been well, 2016. I mean, I turned a year on my first job. I bought my mom an HD TV, DSTV, and new coaches. And I hear this flow in my ears telling that she also got lucky there. So it's been well, so says Victor.
And Gosinati says, well, it started well as I bought a car in January and in June was hospitalized after rolling with it. So 2016 wasn't good for me.
So sad to hear, and Kosinati, and I hope all the best that you've recovered, my friend. This one from Lachasa Butler Molo says, hello, Mr. Elvis Candle and everybody else here on SABC. You missed Eben there, Lachasa. 2016 to him was fabulous. He says, I really enjoyed it, but I wish it could bring back #Mendoza. Of course, we lost a great musician there in Mendoza. A popular culture, of course, and music there. Kwaito made it very popular. And crossover for everybody to listen to and dance to. You remember that song? Kalagatla. But it's time to take a look at your news headlines.
Today is World AIDS Day with national celebrations taking place in Davidson and Kuruleni. This year's theme, it is in our hands to end HIV and TB. And Fidel Castro's ashes have begun a marathon procession across Cuba to his final resting place in the east of the island. And the oil producers group OPEC has agreed to cut production in an effort to boost prices, provided key countries outside the organization takes a similar step. Well, before we get into that news, Elvis is now on the sports desk. Let's find out what's happening.
Yeah, let me get a little bit sporty there, Renee, with the sports news. As you know, Kendall is not here today. He'll be back tomorrow. So let's take a look at your sports news. Well, it seems like we haven't got the sports headlines in as yet, but let me just tell you quickly what will be coming up. A sensational last gap equalizer saw Barocco FC claim a 1-1 draw against Orlando Pirates, as well as thousands of soccer fans in the Brazilian city of Chapeco filled the stadium in a moving vigil to the victims of that deadly Colombian plane crash. Now, that's coming up a little bit later, so you have to stay tuned. But right now, it's back to Renee to give you all about the news, and as you know, it's World AIDS Day.
Yes, thank you very much, Elvis. Now, today is World AIDS Day, as you know. This year's theme is, "It is in our hands to end HIV and TB." Now, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa will be delivering the keynote address at Davidson in Ekurhuleni. Now, he has thanked South Africans for working with government to prevent the plight of HIV/AIDS.
Fellow South Africans, as we approach World AIDS Day on the 1st of December, we are inspired by the many actions taken by many South Africans from all walks of life over many years to fight AIDS. Thank you to your efforts. We have the biggest HIV treatment program in the world, with nearly 3.5 million people on life-saving antiretrovirals. We are bringing care and treatment for TB to the doorstep of vulnerable populations in correctional services and mining towns. Today, South Africans are living longer and have more productive lives. Fewer people are dying from AIDS and TB. We have dramatically reduced mother-to-child transmission of HIV. This has been made possible because all of us have worked together.
Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, under the theme, Building Tomorrow's Legends Today, taking the tune from The Woman of 1956, the Eastern Cape government is out in Mount Fletcher to commemorate World AIDS Day. The HIV and AIDS pandemic poses the greatest development challenge for the province. The CADA report for the Eastern Cape AIDS Council estimates that the HIV prevalence rate in the Eastern Cape is between 8 to 11%, especially growing faster among the youth. Now, today, the provincial government will use this day to educate and empower their communities, focusing on the youth and also teaching them safety methods to reduce, amongst many challenges faced by the youth, teenage pregnancy. SABC's Evia Potti joins us now from Mount Fletcher. She is with a guest there. Very good morning to you, everywhere, and welcome. Before you speak to your guest, can you just tell us what is transpiring there briefly?
A very good day to you too, Elvis. We are at Mount Fletcher. We're at the stadium right now. Earlier on this morning, though, we were at a school nearby, which is also in a rural area. You will remember that the Eastern Cape is predominantly made of rural areas. So, local government, together with government, has decided this year, to come and bring the commemoration closer to the majority of the people that make the Eastern Cape. Earlier on, there was a handover of laptops, a cyber lab for students in a school here, and also there's been a planting of trees. But right now we are at the stadium, a local stadium, where they're going to have more of an educational program running, specifically looking at educating people in terms of what government actually offers for those that are affected and also infected with HIV, not only HIV, but just health as a regular, and as well as educating the youth. As you do know, Elvis, in the Eastern Cape, those that are affected and affected by HIV start from the ages of 14. The youth is a bracket that is mainly affected by, HIV, those that are infected, losing parents, having childhood homes. But most importantly, right now, I have behind me the MEC of Health and as well as the Deputy Minister of Communication. First, we're going to speak to the Deputy Minister, who's going to tell us a bit more about how it goes hand in hand to make sure that, pupils, especially in the rural areas, Deputy Ministers, have facilities that will link them to the remainder of the world, also educating them about important things like HIV and AIDS.
Thank you, Eve. Mainly, you will recall that as the Department of Communications, we exist simply to encourage the communities to create a dialogue. And then when they have that dialogue, then they're able to interact with the world. They have gained information. Therefore, that's one of the reasons why we work hand in hand with the telecoms in terms of the mobile operators to say through our regulator, they must roll out the schools connectivity. We don't just roll out schools connectivity with laptops, but we make sure that there's educational content that will empower them with information and knowledge so that they can make better informed choices. And therefore, if we have done that, we know that they will take wise decisions. Hence, we say, if we are to build other legends or the incoming generation of new legends building from the women of 1956, we've got to make sure that we empower them at a younger stage. And that is why, as the Department of Communications, we are here today in Mount Flenta to make sure that indeed they communicate wire about the sexual problems that they go through. But most importantly, how do they stay positive? How do they stay healthy if they are positive already, but how to remain negative if they are not yet there?
Thank you so much, Minister. Deputy Minister, sorry for that. Right, I think also very important, we're going to speak now to the MEC, Umamujanti, who's going to tell us in terms of the challenges that we face as the Eastern Cape, looking at the youth and seeing that, those affected and also infected by HIV mama start at a very young age of 14. What is it that maybe we can do to start educating them at a younger age in terms of how to keep healthy and also, how to abstain or prevent themselves from being in situations where they find themselves being infected or affected?
Thank you very much. You'll remember that 3 months ago we launched a program that focused particularly on young girls who fall pregnant at an early age, contract HIV, and also have children that are malnourished. We think as a province, we have the problem that the country has of having these children between the ages of 14 and 25, particularly girls contracting HIV, which tells us clearly that they do not have sex with their peers. They have sex with older men. One of our strategies as we roll out the programs for the youth, the dialogues that we have been doing for the past 6 weeks around here, is to educate the younger girls not to have sex with older men. If they do, they must please use condoms all the time. And our distribution of condoms has increased. That we are seeing because there's a reduction in the sexually transmitted diseases. But we still have youth that fall pregnant, which points to the non-usage of condoms. During the dialogue period, we found out from other kids that they are scared of their parents. That is why then we said, let's call all the parents to come to these dialogues so that they should know that when you see a condom in your house, you should be happy. You shouldn't just think that this girl is sleeping around, but you should be happy that your child is protecting herself.
And then, Mama, I think just lastly, in terms of, we understand that you guys have initiated more of an open culture to communicate amongst parents and as well as the youth, and also the youth to access facilities from government officials and government caretakers. But will we also see a program that will also roll out, that will come back to assess whether the initiatives taken by government are actually working, especially in the rural communities?
Definitely so. Remember that the program that is done by communications through the Deputy Minister, there will also be programs of sports. And all these children that will be utilizing the laptops that they were given and the children that will be playing sports, we are going to come back and train them to be ambassadors so that when they go out to a match, the first thing you do is to sit down as the parties and discuss about youth problems before you can go on the field.
Thank you so much for your time, Mama.
Thank you very much.
Well, Elvis, there we have it. The Eastern Cape is mainly focusing on creating legends that will take over the country and therefore equipping them with what is most important, which is education. And you will remember that South Africa does have the largest health facilities or health program that looks to curb HIV and AIDS, and that goes hand in hand with communication as well as education. We're going to go now and join the program inside. Hopefully we'll be able to give you a better update later. But for now, it's back to you guys in studio.
Thank you so much, Shiviwe Poti. That's our reporter out in Mount Fletcher, giving us the latest there. But let's continue with the program now. Over back to Renee.
Yes, thank you, Elvis. Now, meanwhile, the first massive HIV vaccine trial has been launched. Dubbed the HVTN702, the trial tests effectiveness against new HIV infections. Now, the study is being spearheaded by 4 South African medical professors. Medical researchers say the study is critical to South Africa due to the high rate of new HIV infections. The vaccine is expected to end new HIV infections. Now, it's been tested on HIV-negative participants aged between 18 and 35. The study, which involves more than 5,000 people, will take about 5 years to complete. If the trial yields more than a 50% positive result, it will then be open to a larger population. Now, in other news, the ANC has paid tribute to the late Cuban leader Fidel Castro. Party leaders and supporters filled up the OR Tambo Hall in Khayelitsha on the Cape Flats. The memorial service, led by Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, was also streamed live to Cuba's capital city of Havana.
Remembering Fidel Castro, a charismatic internationalist and revolutionary, ANC leaders and supporters gathered in Khayelitsha to mourn, but also to celebrate Castro for his ideals and the role he played in liberating South Africa during apartheid.
We honor him and pay tribute to him because he was fearless, he was courageous, he was principled, he was disciplined. And as we think about his life, we also begin to imagine another icon that we had in our own lives, and that's Nelson Mandela.
The Deputy President also used the service to encourage all to emulate Castro's ideals and the Cuban work ethic. Castro was remembered for his ideals in social cohesion. Leaders lauded him for his ethical leadership, selflessness, and internationalist perspective, a champion of the poor.
We've come to say today, thank you to Comrade Fidel, the real El Commandant. We've come to say today, thank you to the volunteers that contributed to defend our comrades in Pito Carnival.
Nomawetu Solwandle, SABC News, Khayelitsha.
Meanwhile, in Cuba, tens of thousands of people have lined the route of the procession that is carrying the ashes of Fidel Castro to his final resting place. The funeral cortege is on a 3-day journey to the east of Cuba. The caravan is going back along the roads Castro and his revolutionaries took in 1959. It formed part of their victory march to Havana to build a communist society on the doorstep of the United States. Now, Castro ruled Cuba for half a century until 2008. His death on Friday at the age of 90 has plunged the Caribbean island into 9 days of mourning. Castro's ashes will be interred on Sunday. Oil prices have surged nearly 10% to above $50 a barrel after the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, also known as OPEC, agreed to cut production for the first time in 80 years. Now, OPEC says that overall production will be reduced by 1.2 million barrels a day. This is about 3% of the group's output. This agreement represents a major reversal in policy for Saudi Arabia, which 2 years ago tried to undermine other high-cost producers by raising its output. OPEC says it expects producers from outside the group, including Russia, to join with additional cuts totaling 600,000 barrels a day. The OPEC cuts were deeper than many analysts had expected, amounting to about 1% of global production. The 14-member group hopes the output cuts will help shrink a supply glut that has been fed in partly by the U.S. shale boom and has depressed oil prices for more than 2 years. Coming back to World AIDS Day, now Right to Care is rolling out a program to educate healthcare workers about the LGBTI community. The program is focused on ensuring LGBTI individuals feel safe, unjudged, and fully accepted in clinics and facilities. It trains healthcare professionals to eliminate any personal negative sentiments towards LGBTI patients. Now, the program empowers them to ask the right questions of LGBTI patients so shame-free answers can be given and the right action can be taken. Now, to tell us more about the program, we are joined in studio by Craig Chapman from Right to Care. A very good morning and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me and good morning to your listeners.
Of course, this is a very important day. And yes. How important or how significant is World AIDS Day for the LGBTI community?
It's very important. The LGBTI community and the key populations as a whole are perceived to carry a much higher burden of the HIV virus. And acceptance and tolerance is enshrined in our Constitution, but it doesn't always translate into good practice in our services, especially regarding the LGBTI community, the lesbian, the gay, the bisexual, transgender, and intersex community in our healthcare systems and other government services. And so the aim is to make sure that they are sensitized to ask the right questions. And by asking the right questions, they can then ensure that the LGBTI communities, A, come back to the clinics, and B, access the services. And there are three main problems. The first one is the messaging. When you go into a clinic as an LGBTI person, you are surrounded by posters that portray a husband and a wife and a child, but there are very seldom any LGBTI posters in any clinic in South Africa. So we need to change that. We've been very successful in our messaging to fighting HIV with the prevention of mother-to-child transmission, and we need to translate that into other communities. And the second is then to get the healthcare workers to ask the right question. Don't just say to your client, are you having sex? That's a closed, the client's going to say yes, and that's the end of the discussion. Ask your client, what kind of sex are you having? Is it anal penetrative? Is it vaginal receptive? Because that's going to impact on the treatment that you are given. So they must ask the question.
Now, these can, perhaps for someone who's not familiar with the LGBTI community, these questions can be uncomfortable to ask.
No one wants to talk about anal sex. It's the big taboo.
So how do we sensitize and educate our healthcare workers, not just in the private, but also the public sector, especially the smaller clinics in the rural areas? How do we get this message
Right to
across?
Care has initiated, firstly within Right to Care, a program, an initiative called Right to Pride. And we started with our own staff, because we have over 2,000 staff, and we realized that we get a lot of staff from different communities and different sexual practices, so that we sensitized our staff how to interact with the LGBTI community. And it's paid off wonderfully, because the LGBTI community within Right to Care starts to feel safer, more empowered, and the other staff now know how to address each other. For example, when a trans woman comes to a clinic, and she's carrying the wrong identity document because the Department of Home Affairs hasn't changed her identity document yet. And so the nurse looks and says, John Smith, and looks at the client and says, sir, why are you here? For a trans woman, that's a huge insult. They need to ask the question, how would you like to be addressed? And that will immediately send a message to your LGBTI community. I'm accepted. I'm recognized. I can come back here. I can access this treatment. And if I access my treatment, the 1990 goal that we all aspire to is going to become much more of a reality than we think.
Now, I know the LGBTI community has been calling for certain or specialized clinics specifically for the LGBTI community. How is this going? Do we have any of these clinics as yet? And
we do.
Do we have? Are we going to see a growth in this from the?
We do, but they're funded by Sir Elton John's foundation, and so in order to cover the entire country, it's far more cost-effective for us to sensitize the staff that we have working within the clinics that we have than to try and build more clinics specifically for LGBTI communities. They're great if they can be funded. But you know, what do we want as an LGBTI community? We want acceptance. I don't want your tolerance. We want acceptance. And we're entitled to that acceptance under the Constitution, and we're entitled to the services under that Constitution.
Now, one of the problems you mentioned was identity documents. Is Right to Care working with the Home Affairs Department in this regard?
We haven't started yet, but we are going to. We're going to roll out a program starting next year, and once we get the cascade effect of rolling out and getting staff to understand that their job is absolutely imperative to the success of fighting HIV, so that it's all interconnected. We have to stop thinking of sex and HIV in silos. We're not the heterosexual community over here and the LGBTI community over there. It's all connected.
Now, this silo that you're talking about, it seems to be hampering efforts to curb HIV.
Yes.
How do we get past this? And just can you explain this term silo thinking?
Well, people think that if you have a husband and a wife and they're having sex and there's no one else in the relationship, the wife doesn't know that the husband has a boyfriend, or the husband doesn't know that the wife has a girlfriend. There's already a crossover. So it does impact. Have the conversation. Talk to each other. You know, we need to think of HIV as a felt fire. And the fire is burning. We talk about all the time of the youth and the young women as very impacted by HIV. Yes, they are. But let's think about this felt fire for a minute and think of the resources, the donor money, as the water fighting the fire. The water's running out. But with any fire, if you don't put out the whole fire, it can flare up again. So by ignoring the LGBTI community and concentrating only on the young women, we are doing our country and ourselves a huge disservice.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
That, of course, is Craig Chapman from Right to Care. Well, it seems that we are now going to take a break. We'll be right back.
ANC moved to ease tensions created by the heated public spat between National Treasury and Eskom.
Eskom denied allegations of impropriety regarding the matter. National Treasury issued a statement accusing Eskom of lying.
The fracas over hairstyles at a Pretoria school has drawn sharp focus on underlying racism and alleged abuse in some schools.
We want relevant answers from the MEC. You must fire the principal.
Here too,
similar sentiments of underlying racism.
It just made me feel like I was not worthy enough of an education because of the type of hairstyle that I had. Because yesterday the statement was, writing an exam is a privilege.
Now, the Indigenous First Nation of South Africa are not satisfied with the process that has been followed to discuss the traditional Khoisan Bill. Public hearings kicked off in Kimberley last week, and many Khoisan communities registered their concern that their input will not be considered. Now, last week, we spoke to Anthony Philip Williams, the chairperson of the Indigenous First Nation of South Africa.
It's shocking the way the portfolio committee has dealt with this. At one stage, they had the hearing scheduled for September, and just like that, somebody just canned it, and then we were just kept in limbo. And then we got correspondence that the hearings will be starting out in January 2017. We are very concerned by the turn of events, because it's going to keep the majority of the people who it intends to recognize outside. It's politics. There's no other way to put it. It's politics, in its worst form. We were really hoping that our government, that we've got great respect for, we were really hoping that the government would be honest brokers. As things stands, the government is not an honest broker, and Mr. Richard, the chairperson of the portfolio, Ndakani, must really come clean and come tell all of us exactly why the haste and why is it done in this particular fashion.
The argument could be that the bill has been in the legislative pipeline since 1997. Is this not perhaps something to celebrate now, that the communities can finally participate in being consulted and give input to the bill?
You see, the bill process is completely flawed. It's flawed in this sense that if you want to talk about recognition of a people, you cannot start by legislating in this particular fashion. What had to happen, and this is a serious issue, not just for the Khoisan community, for our community, but this is an issue for the entire indigenous African community. This goes across the board, because what we have done completely wrong is we have taken and we've built this house on the sand. And you can see now, after 22 years, that this house is imploding because the structural issues have not been addressed. This bill does not recognize that indigenous people as a whole, that includes the so-called black people, and in particular also the Khoisan people, has not been recognized in the fashion that there's been atrocities that has been meted against all indigenous people in this country, and we have not addressed that. So now what we're doing is we're trying to fast forward all of this because we have messed up there, so we're trying to fast forward it, and now we want to try and give recognition to the people at large. This bill is going to explode and implode in the very faces of this government. They better watch this space.
Now, the bill provides, among other things, and you did say that there's no statutory recognition, but the bill recognizes statutory recognition of the legitimate Khoisan leadership and their communities. Is that perhaps not enough, or is it not going far enough in the case of IFNASA?
It doesn't go far enough. And Indigenous First Nation Advocacy South Africa is very clear on this. Even in our meetings, we're very clear on this. It doesn't go far enough, and we'll tell you why. It doesn't go far enough because when you talk about a legitimate community like the Khoi and the San, or previously also known as the Hottentots, which got their seed as the so-called colored people. Once you talk about our community, you've got to first recognize that the Khoi and the San are the first indigenous Africans. And we recognize every other indigenous people, which are also called term black people. We recognize them as the Nguni people who are indigenous to this particular place, and they've got a rightful place within the space of called South Africa. Now, when you talk about an indigenous or the Aboriginal people, as we want to also, you know, term ourselves, be classified, you have to compare apples with apples. When you talk about an Aboriginal people, you have to understand that Aboriginal people across the world are really sovereign people. They have their own sovereignty, and this bill does not recognize that. In fact, the bill goes as far to say, under the definitions, number 1, section 1, subsection 5, under definition, to say that nobody will get First Nation status. We as IVNASA are very clear that we are the First Nation, and First Nation needs to be recognized. And until then, this entire process is a flawed one.
In conclusion, what would you like to see change in the bill in order to make sure that everybody is catered for?
We don't want to see this bill go through in its current form. In fact, as things stands, if this bill goes through like this, we reject the bill in its entirety with the contempt that it deserves. If the portfolio committee and government is very serious about this entire bill, what we need to see, and what IVNASA is calling for, is for a political, social, economic settlement. This economic, social settlement is not exclusively only for the Khoi and the San community. It's an economic settlement that's got to go across the board, in particular also the so-called black people. But we need to see this government call an inquiry so that we can settle this, and that's the only way we can settle it, and we call it a settlement agreement on economic and social aspects.
IVNASA, now the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, have started with those public hearings on the traditional Khoisan bill from the 24th of November until the 9th of December 2016. It started out in the Northern Cape, and it will be followed by the Western and Eastern Cape provinces. We'll get an update shortly. Now, public hearings in the remaining provinces will resume in 2017 when Parliament reopens. The bill, which provides for, among other things, statutory recognition of the legitimate Khoisan leadership and the communities, has been in the legislative pipeline since 1997, and one reason for the delay was the need to develop specific criteria to ensure that only legitimate Khoisan communities and leaders are recognized. Now, to discuss this and more, we are joined by Mr. Amos Musondo. He's a member of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Sir, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Morning to you and morning to all the viewers.
Now, first and foremostly, the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs have indicated in a statement that they believe the time is now ripe to solicit public input and to finalize this very critical piece of legislation. Do you concur with that statement?
We are of the view as the committee that ours is not just a representative democracy, but it is also participatory democracy. And we seek to involve all the stakeholders and ensure that all interest groups have a voice. In this regard, we have therefore set out to speak to all the stakeholders and interest groups with the view of ensuring that this unfinished business of the recognition of the Khoi and the San people is attended to. After long years and years and months of work, the bill is now available, and the consultation process is ongoing. The delays were caused, amongst others, by the fact that we had to do research. And research had to really go into the whole question of the legitimacy of Khoisan leadership. In other words, identify people who have a claim to traditional leaders. Because if that is not done, it would clearly lead to a lot of confusion in the various Khoisan communities. So the question of recognition is work that is in progress, and we're doing everything that we can to ensure that this work is completed, and that indeed, if there are issues that are raised, that those issues are dealt with appropriately. In other words, I mean, the issues like First Nation status, the land question, the question of services to communities, and so on. All of these matters are being raised, and we're not dismissing them. All of them are getting noted because we're hoping that in this entire process, we will then come to a point where we compile a report, and that report will be tabled in the National Assembly, and finally it will be Parliament that will take a decision with regard to the bill and whatever issues that relate to it.
Mr. Masondo, are you satisfied that all the affected communities, especially the Khoisan communities, were consulted about the scheduled hearings? Because as you heard there from our previous interview, that if NASA is saying that some of the communities were not consulted on the schedule of these hearings.
We've had hearings in Kuruman, in Nappington, in Springbok, in the Northern Cape. All of these were well attended, and there was a real meaningful, vibrant, passionate participation. Today, for instance, we'll be going to the Southern Cape. We'll move to George, the Eastern Cape, and then next year we'll go to Northwest Malanga, KwaZulu-Natal, and all the uncovered areas. And we are convinced on our part that we are on track, and that indeed everything is being done to ensure meaningful participation and engagement.
Can you give us an indication of the remaining rollout schedule of for 2016 of the public hearings, Mr. Masondo?
Today we're going to the Southern Cape, and in this regard, we'll go to areas such as the Fredendal, we'll go to Swellendam, we'll go to George, and in the Eastern Cape we'll go to Mtata, East London, and Port Elizabeth.
Now, you also heard from our previous interview from the First Nation that they say that their status as the First Nation need to be recognized, and they want that to be recognized first. Will that be something that government consider?
I think that the first thing to be said is that South Africa is a sovereign state, and we have a constitution, Act 108 of 1996, which is the highest law of the land. We will do everything in keeping with the constitution, and all issues will be engaged in a manner that is non-biased, in a way that is transparent, in a way that seeks to ensure that all views and opinions are heard and are taken into account.
When can we expect the finalization of the bill, Mr. Masondo?
We are confident that by the end of the coming year, starting with the month of July 2017, we shall have done adequate amount of work and shall have prepared for issues to be tabled in Parliament. But of course, in relation to Parliament, it's very important to emphasize that programming there does all the scheduling. So by the end of the year, next year, that's 2017, I think we shall have tabled the bill, and hopefully the Parliament will be able to take a decision on the question of the traditional and Khoisan leadership bill.
Mm-hmm. And you are certain that the bill will address all the issues of the Khoisan, even when it comes to the land question?
We take the view that people at public hearings are free to raise whatever issue that is of interest to them, and that the committee has the responsibility to ensure that we craft a bill that will be of such a nature that it really meets the broad expectations. I can't say that everything will be in the bill, but what I can say is that the committee is very sensitive to and responsive to the issues that are being raised.
Mr. Masonda, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our parliamentary studios.
Thank you very much.
That was Amos Masondo. He's the member of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, and we'll keep you posted on that issue. As you know, the Parliament or the hearings are still continuing. It's over now to Renee.
Yes, continuing with that discussion, the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has started with public hearings on the Traditional and Khoisan Bill in Kimberley. This took place last week. Public hearings in other provinces will resume in 2017 when Parliament reopens. Now, this bill, which aims to provide statutory recognition of the legitimate Khoisan leadership and communities, has been in the legislative pipeline since 1997. Now, earlier, we were joined by Brendan Boyle, senior researcher at the Land and Accountability Research Centre at the University of Cape Town, and he took us through this process.
Elvis, the notion of tradition of public hearings is crucial to our system of democracy. It's crucial to transparency. It's crucial to accountability. So it's very important that these public hearings do get underway. But they do have to be real. It has to be a real process of listening and of hearing. It can't be just a tick box thing where, because the law says public hearings have to take place, one goes, sits in a room for a day, listens, basically files things in file 13 and move on. This bill was actually introduced in September last year. And we hear that there have been at least 2 earlier attempts to schedule public hearings about the bill, and they didn't go ahead. They were cancelled at the last minute. So now it's very important that they do happen, but I'm not sure whether there's been adequate notice to communities about where and when they will happen.
What does that mean? Are you saying that communities were not adequately informed?
You know, the Constitutional Court reaffirmed in a recent judgment the importance of public hearings being comprehensive and being well advertised. And the Court, in fact, said that 7 days' notice even was not enough. But we don't know what notice has been given, but these hearings were only confirmed to MPs at, I think, Monday last week, so 10 days ago. And then the process has to get rolling of informing communities that they're going to happen. I believe there have been parliamentary outreach groups in the area, and the hall is certainly full today, so there are a lot of people that are there. But, you know, this bill is not only about the Khoisan. It's not even mainly about the Khoisan. It is a very important part that Khoisan communities are being given an opportunity to be recognized as traditional communities. But 2/3 of this bill actually affects people who live in the former homelands. The biggest part of this bill is actually a reenactment of the TLGFA, the Framework Act, which is the Traditional Local Governance Framework Act. And that's the one that creates the parameters for traditional authority at the moment. And with communities that we work with, we do a lot of workshops and a lot of research in these areas where we invite people to talk about the issues that are of concern to them. And the issues that come up there are 4 about this bill that are primary. There are many issues, but 4 key ones. The first of them is the boundaries. This bill will again reinforce the boundaries of the former homelands. Not everybody knows that basically in '94 we thought we were done with homelands, but what happened was that the borders of those old homelands were taken in total, lock, stock and barrel, and were created as the boundaries of traditional authority. That has not been well received by all of the communities, and the TKLB, the new bill that we're talking about now, will reimpose those very same boundaries. So when you look at a map, everybody who used to live in a rural, in a homeland, now lives in a traditional community, whether they like it or not. There's also the issue of identities. This bill again imposes an identity. You are where you live. If you are in one of the old homelands, that doesn't apply to the Khoi and the San, but it does apply to people who live in the homelands. So if you live in Mapela or if you live in Bapong, you belong to that. Your identity is Bapo. Your identity is Mapela, and you owe allegiance, whether you like it or not, to the senior traditional leader in that area. Now, that's a very big thing for people, particularly because many of them came to these areas as a result of things like forced removals or being moved away to make place for the Hartbeespoort Dam years ago, or just for economic reasons. Now, there's the issue of accountability, which this new law is equally vague on enforcing accountability to the people who live on the land, to the people who own the land. That's a huge flaw in the bill, in the law that's enforced now, and it's not in any way improved by the TKLB.
According to the proposed bill, the Khoisan must declare their affiliations while other traditional communities are determined geographically. Why is that a precondition, you think?
It's a very important one, and the chairperson, Mr. Mdekani, I had an interview with him at Parliament earlier this week, and he focused on that himself as an important difference, and he feels that the provision, the model proposed for the Khoisan is better than the model that will be reimposed in traditional areas, because it's one of self-identification, of self-affiliation. It allows people who want to belong to a Khoi or a San community to say, I belong to this, I see myself as a member of it, and I acknowledge the traditional leader that will be the head of my community. It's about people. So the version that's created for the Khoi and the San is about people. The version that is created and will be reinforced for people in the old homelands is about land. It's where you live. It's not you. It's about the place that you live in. It's about the land that the chief wants to control. Mr. Mdekani said in that interview that he much preferred the model that was being proposed for the Khoi and the San, even for people who live in the former homelands, and I must say it looks a whole lot better. The traditional councils will have the right to transact with mines, with somebody who wants to build a road, somebody who wants to build a shopping centre, without consulting the people who live on that land at all. It says the Premier has to approve, it says it has to be in the interests of the community, but it's not the community that decides whether it's in their interests, it's the Premier. There is no downward accountability, there's no report back, there's no asking, no consultation or consent.
Well, that, of course, was Brendan Boyle, Senior Researcher at the Land and Accountability Research Centre there at the University of Cape Town.
We'll keep you posted on that subject. It's ongoing on the traditional bill and Khoisan bill. We'll keep you posted. But today, we ask you a question, but first on the poll, we ask you the question, is the world winning the war against HIV and AIDS?
Well, it seems like 51% of the voters say yes. Yes, we are making progress. We're winning the war against.
Well, it's really split right almost in the middle. 20 hours left for you to vote. You can still do so. I'd like to find out from you, is that the case, and what have you observed? Is that really the case? But let's take a look at the question of the day, and there's a couple of comments because we say to you, hello, December. How was 2016 for you? Let's find out. Let's take a look and see if the comments are there on the bright side. This one from Eugene Mochabi says, it was a very bad year for me. I was involved in a car accident. Can't can't wait, probably you wanted to say, wait for 2017 already, says Eugene. Well, so sorry to hear there, Eugene.
And Victor Zwane says, it's been well. I mean, I turned a year on my first job, bought my mom an HD TV, DSTV, and a new couch. He's had a good year.
Kiddies and papa. So says Victor Zwane. And those are all your comments. Thank you so much for sending them through. We'll be back, same time, same place, right here tomorrow. From myself, Elvis Preslin.
And me, Renee Vest.
We'll see you then. Ciao for now. Arrivederci.